You never feel like the pen is like behind the character's head as they're doing things. The setup makes sense in the context of the overarching narrative, which I know sounds like a very simple thing that like, oh, every writer should do that. Well, unfortunately, not every writer does.
That whole scene, by the way, like that feels as well written as something like what this guy worked on, Gargoyles, Batman the Animated Series. It's like it's sort of like crime alley noir kind of setup, right? Which is a scene that this guy's done a billion times in various works. But he energizes it with that Star Wars like flavor. It feels like it belongs specifically in Star Wars, like this particular kind of slime like feels like something out of like Jabba's palace, right? But just on Coruscant.
And he sees a senator that he has heard a reputation of. He knows as someone of true integrity that he knows if he'll get him to. He gives him the holocron, and right before he passes out, he thanks Senator Palpatine for helping him complete his mission.
Just run into the room. The Sith are real. He's right behind me. I've got a holocron here that proves it. Just send an email while he's in the taxi before he goes off to think. Just go to the Jedi Temple and not try and hunt Maul down yourself for no reason. Just use a real blaster bolt, kill Maul on the shot. It's oh my god, so many ways to avoid an absolute galactic crisis.
Dean wants you to feel that way.
I know. It's really good. It's really good. It's just I hate it. Hello, ladies and gentlemen of the internet, and welcome back to Fanalysis Star Wars. I'm Callan, this is Matt.
Hey everybody, welcome.
And this is Evan.
Greetings.
Today we're going to be reviewing the long-awaited Darth Maul Shadowhunter.
All right, so this book was written by Michael Reeves, who's no longer with us, but he's a guy who I have to thank for like a lot of things that delighted me during my childhood, because for those who don't know, in addition to being like a contributor to Star Wars stuff from like maybe earlier on than he would like, because he was involved with things like the Droids show, I think. But he yeah, so he goes back to the 80s with Star Wars, like before like, you know, like the quality kind of came to the EU. But anyway, I won't say that. I won't paint with that broad of a brush.
I mean, maybe we'll review the Ewok show one of these days. Who knows?
We will not. Maybe you will. I will not. Yeah. But anyway, yeah, so if you're going back to that era, his name was floating around in certain circles, but he also was like a writer slash story editor slash story by guy for some of my favorite stuff when I was a kid, including Batman the Animated Series, the illustrious Batman the Animated Series. He had something to do with something like 30 odd episodes, whether he was a writer or story editor. So and from like the first like 4 seasons, so he was there. He's also credited on IMDb, at least. I haven't popped the thing in to check this, but he's credited as the guy who wrote the screenplay for Mask of the Phantasm, which is arguably the best Batman movie, animated movie, with the possible exception of like Return of the Joker, from Batman Beyond. But
definitely
talking just pure Batman. You know, serious guy. Also for me, he wrote like a lot of like the best Gargoyle stuff, including like the series opener and the series finale, City of Stone, like one of the best like 4-part like
I actually forgot
things
about
of
that.
anything.
Wow.
Yeah, like he was a big deal.
He's done a lot. Wow.
Yeah. And you know, I don't know how he was as a person, never met him, never listened to him speak, but he was really super talented, and I'm sorry he's no longer here. He left around 2 years ago, I think, in like 2023 sometime, but very talented man. And I don't know how many like I don't think I did read everything he did as far as Star Wars goes. Did he do the Coruscant Nights that follow up on this, by the way? Was that him?
I was about to say he did the Coruscant Night books, and he also did the MedStar duology side by side with Steve Perry, ironically, for the previous book review we did, and he also co-wrote Death Star along again with Steve Perry. They work together a lot. Interestingly enough.
I guess I have been through all his stuff. I thought there was more than that, but I haven't looked at any of that in years, so like I don't remember much of Coruscant Nights, especially. I'd like to pick those up again for some of these someday. But yeah, it'd be nice to go through those again after so long away. But back on topic for today, Darth Maul Shadowhunter. This book came out in I think it was 2001. I just checked the Wikipedia and I already forgot, but I think it was 2001. And my memories go back.
2001, yes.
Yeah, they go back longer than I'd like to admit. So
as we were just discussing off camera.
Yeah. For different reasons. Yeah, but yeah, like my memories of this book obviously are like well over 20 years old, so that's just weird. But yeah, for me, this was always like a favorite growing up. I don't know. What do you guys think? How did you come to this? When did you read it in your time as Star Wars fans?
Well, actually, I was introduced to this book through you, Matt. Like one of the first videos, no, for real, one of the first books, like
You're
reviews I ever
old,
watched
Matt.
from
You're
you
so old.
from back in the day was this, and I hadn't read this book at the time, so I through your recommendation, I actually read it not too long after I saw your video. So thanks for that.
Yeah.
And I really enjoyed it. This is one that, looking back on it now, even though it's a more, I wouldn't say it's a fully simplistic story, it's very surprising how well everything holds up, especially for this time in the EU, because like we just explained, it was released, in between Phantom Menace and Attack of the Clones, so certain aspects of the lore had to be treated a certain way. And what I really like about this, just like structurally, is like it's your classic like hunter predator story. Darth Maul has a mission and he must fulfill it for the sake of the grand plan. But what I really like about this is whenever you're doing a story like that, and I'm sure any fan of the Predator movies can tell you this, you want to make the both the prey and the pursuer come off as competent throughout, because on the one hand, if the pursuer is constantly getting foiled, then what's the threat? But on the other hand, if the prey is constantly being beaten down, well, how are we, again, where's the tension? How are we supposed to follow this? And what I think this book really does well is it sort of toes the line between the competence and the dread of all of the characters. Maul, yes, even though he gets foiled at certain points, it's written it's written in such a way where yeah. Well, I mean, I honestly think it's written in such a way where it comes off as you buy it. Like every slip up he has a cause, it has a reason, it has a purpose, and he goes out of his way to rectify that, every chance he gets. And even in points where he is failing, in one aspect, he's still succeeding. He still defeats Anun Bandara. He still gets the holocron. He still, kills the members of Black Sun who originally survived his onslaught from the Darth Maul comic, which, by the way, there's a lot of follow-up to that in this book, which we'll get into. So, and even in the points where he gets foiled, there's certain circumstances at play, like with, Pavan and, having that nodule that makes him, not be sensed in the Force. Things like that. Like, even if you don't like certain things that lead to it, I like the fact that the writing goes out of its way to justify why these events take place. Like you never
he always feels threatening throughout the book.
Exactly.
Even as he's stumbling over his own face. Yeah, it's good at doing that.
Yeah. And he doesn't always stumble over. Like, he, for every failure he has, he succeeds almost in, perfect synchrony. So again, I really do appreciate that, because it's not the easiest, line to toe. And I think this book does that really well.
Yeah,
agreed.
For sure.
Agreed. This one I had come to fresh. This is one of my many Star Wars gaps in knowledge. So this I only really read this.
This is your first time reading this?
First time. I had knowledge of a lot of what happens in it, because it's obviously such a heavy piece of relevance for the character of Maul, and I've done work with the character in the past.
You've read the Darth Maul comic when he hit Black
Sun. Yeah. I've encountered. Yeah, I read that. But yeah, no, it was the first time for me, and it was funny. Not to derail it, because obviously it has no relevance here, but it amused me how much material that comes up for Maul in terms of like his stats and his capabilities for using him in versus videos, etc.
Well, he was he wasn't around very long, because
exactly.
he died in the Phantom.
But it's funny because I feel like for every one that it makes a good case for, like in his favor, there's like 3 that are against him in this book for this. I completely agree with everything you said, Evan, on the threat and the enjoyment. But yeah, it's funny how much there's a lot of Schadenfreude mixed in with like the infuriation here. Because one of the things I completely agree about in terms of the writing quality, and it's impressive how much you manage to keep up that presence of threat and predator and prey all throughout the book, when it is as much other character stories as it is a Maul story. Very tricky to do that for this length of time. Like the pursuit is pretty much not literally page 1, but effectively page 1 to the end. There's very little let up on that, so that was impressive. And also, so much of what was at stake here is material that we know ultimately can't go anywhere. Like we know that the Jedi aren't going to get the information they need to get for at the end of this. We know that all the decision making that goes into place in terms of trying to reveal the threat of the Sith isn't going to happen based on the films. It's very tricky to get that balance right, where you're threading through the story the idea that they may make some kind of progress, they may have some kind of victory, and have the right reader along with you all that way, knowing that ultimately it can't manifest in any meaningful way anyway. So yeah, I enjoyed the fact that they managed to strike that balance. We'll talk about the very end where it gets to the point where you're just like you're just infuriated. It's like just go to the temple, just go to the temple, just go to the Jedi temple. But you know,
by then they kind of earned it though, so it's a little bit more tolerable. But something else too is the actual writing style that Michael Reeves uses throughout this. I really found myself enjoying it a lot more than even not that I ever hated it, but it's not so much, it's not first person, but it's not full second. It's like 1.5 person. And I think some people may find that kind of jarring, but I really like his use of the descriptors as a way of sort of bridging the perspectives. And he puts a lot of character into each of the POVs that he's a part of. Each feels unique. Each feels like it's sort of coming from a certain perspective that is tied directly to the overall narrative. And he puts a lot of character into those descriptors, even though it's not very prose heavy. And what I really appreciate too is that he makes Coruscant itself almost feel like a character. He, with the way he's describing the different levels, just how massive everything is, how each level has its own distinct sort of, culture, the technology that goes into it, even things that, how people act. Like there's this one little bit that I would just like to read here that's really quick, but it really sums up things really well when, right here, one moment. Here it is. And this takes place between Lorne and I-5, and he basically says, Lorne stopped to stare at I-5. A Given blundered into him, muttered an apology, and kept going. Without taking his gaze from I-5, Lorne grabbed the Given's exoskeleton, pulled him back, and retrieved his wallet. He then shoved the pit pocket away. I'm listening, he told the droid. Just little bits like that, like, oh, a pickpocket goes by, and like Lorne, without breaking eye contact, just goes over. It's like, yep, I know the drill with this. And he takes his wallet back, and they don't linger on it too long. But like little descriptors like that, like you immediately get what, like, not only what this level is about, but how experienced Lorne is at dealing with these kinds of people, because he's been in the slums for so long. And I love again, little things like that, like the descriptors. It's just long enough to where you get that sort of energy, and I really appreciate that. And even things with like his descriptions of the Force, like I like how he describes Maul as like, when he draws on the dark side to send out his perception, he describes it as like a tendril of darkness, like he's summoning, a tendril from the abyss to kind of like hone in on his prey, things like that, and are just so nice. And the fact that each is so different, but at the same time, so compelling is something, a real strength of the writing that honestly I had forgotten, and I really think it does hold up well.
Yeah, I completely agree. It didn't surprise me when you mentioned as well the overlap with Perry. I'd forgotten about that because we talked about in the Shadows of the Empire review the fact that we were talking about the ground level of Coruscant and how he's kind of done a good job of enriching the texture. There's a lot of stylistic overlap between that book and this one, and what gets carried over into the following novels as well that they wrote together. They've got a very similar.
Probably why they were paired up, honestly.
Yeah, exactly. They've got a similar style and not necessarily voice, because I agree. Reeves is much stronger in terms of the character voice here in this book, but the general kind of feel of the world that they're moving through, they do a good job of kind of showing that in the story. I enjoyed that. On the Force point, just want to mention, I do agree that it was a good description of most of the kind of use of the Force. I did think the tendril specifically was relied on a little bit too much. I would have liked to see more of a difference between the way that Maul used it and where the Jedi did in that actual physical description. All of the cultural and intellectual differences were there strongly, but the actual physicality of it was that there was a bit of overlap there and a bit of overuse in my opinion, but tiny little thing. But just because you mentioned
we're
the word
far
itself.
too early in this for a Callinism like that. But anyway, I want to say I am glad that you mentioned everything you just did, both of you, especially what you were talking about, Evan, because I was surprised by how much I thought this book held up, because going back to Darth Bane, which I used to love, was just such like a I want to fix this, you know what I mean? And this, I can think of like two things that really annoy me, and they're just specific word choices that I could have done without, and have always felt that way, so it wasn't new revelations. I was surprised by how, and delighted by how, my thoughts on this have not changed much. If anything, I'm more surprised, or I'm more impressed by it now than I used to be, because this was this holds a special place in my life because trying to think, am I a liar when I say this? I think I'm right in saying that this is the first like adult Star Wars book that I read, like as in not something that had like the scholastic label and like was a Jedi Apprentice book or like really meant for kids. Those were good. Don't get me wrong. I would still read those, but they're totally meant for kids. You know, this the level of violence, the use of the language that's in here. Not that it's coarse language per se,
Right.
but just like at a level that you wouldn't necessarily expect like a 7-year-old to be following all of these conversations perfectly. It was the first thing that because I was born the year that like Heir to the Empire came out, for example, so I wasn't reading that with the first generation that had it. Anything that came out between then and like the prequels was kind of stuff I doubled back around to, if I read it at all, by the time I was like a teenager and like really immersed in the mythos. So this was a book that I read. I mean, I guess I was 9 for most of 2001, so I probably read it at the age of 9, and I loved it. I thought I was reading something seriously like deep and thought-provoking, and I'm delighted by the fact that I don't think that it's not that. You know what I mean? Like going back to it now, it doesn't feel like something that's embarrassing or horrifically simplistic, or anything like that. So yeah, this was one that I really, really loved. Actually, like my earliest memories of this one are like my mom at the time. She was like opening a daycare. Like it was her. She didn't open her own business. She ran like a giant daycare. She was like the director of the place, and so she had to like, get in there and open up for each day. And so I remember like the lights, like the street lights or whatever, because it was before the sun came up. So we'd be going there at like 4 a.m. or something. Horrible to be like woken up before you have to go to school, so you can go to work with your mom like that. But I had this book, and I remember like the Journey song, like "Street Lights, People." And I was like reading it to Streetlight. I was like looking at because I didn't have like a flashlight
That's
or
a
whatever.
proper
So
core
like
memory. That is, yeah.
Yeah. That's a core
neat,
memory.
yeah.
That's not going anywhere. They had this stupid thing that they probably don't have anymore in like California. Anyway, called like SSR, which just sounds like this weird government thing because it is, I guess. It was like sustained silent reading. You were supposed to like read. Like it's just reading.
Yeah, you
I
talked
don't
about
know
that
what they
before
call
in
it.
the
Wow.
previous reviews. Yeah. It's
No,
great
I
stuff.
remember. Wow, that brings back memories. Jeez.
Yeah, so like every kid in like class had to like read, but you could kind of read whatever you wanted within reason as long as you were quiet, because that was the SS part, which is a bad thing to be saying now, but like sustained silent, you know what I mean? But anyway, so yeah, this was a book that I read a bunch as a kid, and then I didn't touch it again for like many years. I think the last time I looked at it was whenever Plagueis came out, like 13, 14 years ago. And the reason for that is because towards the end of Plagueis, it starts having overlap with the events of this plot, to the point where I was going to say, I imagine that must have been baffling for anybody who didn't read this, not realizing that, Callan, you fit that description. I thought you had read this a long time ago. How did you keep up with Plagueis? Maybe that's a discussion for another time, but like to me, that just seems so impossible to follow, like because like they keep like having conversations at different points in the junctures of this plot line. Plagueis and Sidious commenting on
it's another
like
one
the
that was heavily
baffling
threaded through.
turns.
Yeah.
Right.
Again, I had knowledge of bits and pieces of what happened in this. It was one of those ones that it's the kind of thing that comes up on in anyone who's done Wikipedia dives and the comics and everything. There's a lot of overlap there, so it was easy to pick up the big building blocks of this one without having read it. But just how they actually fit together and properly manifested was a bit above my pay grade at the time. So yeah, I hadn't actually read that. But yeah, no, having read it now, I'm glad I did, because I completely agree all of it. Particularly the strength of the voice in the world, like you feel grounded in the perspective of the characters here from the nature of the distinctions between each of them. It's very solid for that. And we should probably take the moment just to mention it now as well, the narration from the audiobook. Because I think we have differing opinions on that. The three of us,
we listened to the new unabridged version that they released recently, where Sam Witwer actually does the audiobook narration, and Sam Witwer is Sam Witwer. I've actually, honestly, I've never had
the audiobook.
Honestly, like I've never had a problem with his Maul voice, like in vacuum, but like he definitely puts a lot of energy into some of his descriptions, which for some people can be distracting at certain times. Other times it's fine. Like I was actually, to be honest, I was actually kind of impressed at some of his impressions of certain characters. Like I never heard him do his a Qui-Gon voice before.
Qui-Gon is his best one. Qui-Gon is the best.
Wow, that's actually a really good Qui-Gon voice, and like he's only in for like two. He's only in it for like two scenes.
He's better at like Palpatine and Yoda, but obviously they're a lot easier to pull off. Yeah, that's a lot less impressive to do those.
And for Maul, he just does what he does in Clone Wars, which is
and carries that over to all of the base narration as well, which I think some people take issue with. It didn't bother me. I expected going into this from descriptions from other people that it would be a lot really over the top one, and it objectively it is.
Other people are here and they still hold that opinion.
And it is objectively over the top, but it didn't bother me in the same way that it has with the other ones we've been discussing recently for whatever reason. In fact, there was a weird moment about 2/3 in where I was convinced, like, have I gone crazy or has this changed narrators for a chapter, because it sounded exactly like the person who did, I can't remember the name of the guy who did the other one, Dark Lords. Sounded very similar briefly when it was in one of the Pavan chapters. But
I think don't rule out the fact that you may have gone crazy, because I don't know what you're talking about.
Potentially, but it wasn't the case. Pavan voice got very similar for a bit, and then I was like, okay, moving on. It re-simulated back to the standard. But yeah, it didn't bother me. The enthusiasm did not bother me in this one for the most part. There were a few bits where it was very Darth Maul over the top when it wasn't Darth Maul. But yeah, just as a whole, I was fully engaged with this in a way that
I don't know who I'm sitting with. Tasteless people here. I mean, like this narration, I have to turn the speed up. I've had this audiobook since it came out, like well over a year ago, maybe 2 years, and I kept putting off listening to it because I can't with the Maul voice. I can't. And what frustrates me is I think he has a perfectly pleasant, just narrating voice. I like his voice. Just do that. Don't do the over every goddamn thing. And the times that were really nuts is like when he would do Sidious when Sidious wasn't around.
Yeah, he was in his own voice.
There was a bit
that's a little jarring.
Not even internal dialogue or remembering quotes, but just outright description. It's the same thing with the Jedi when he goes corruption from the voice of the perspective of Darsha.
Yeah, there was a bit where like Maul was thinking about something, and like the word Darth Sidious appeared in the text, and just for that one word, he went into and it just makes me like, well, what are you doing? Like, I mean, like just stop, you know. And I like his voice. That's the thing, like his actual voice. And I know that he's like a Star Wars freak and like a nerd and super passionate about this stuff, and that's great. And God bless him and all the rest, but. He is not just a little over the top. I don't know why you guys are underselling it, what he's doing here. I mean, he is like the dial's broken and can't be switched back anymore. Okay, 100%. like he is all the way up. Okay, let's be honest, right?
Sure. It's a lot, but it's not constant. Like there are moments where it's just him speaking. It's not always. Like that,
the actual intonation is all over the top, but for me, it lacks the emotional enthusiasm that's misplaced in certain parts of the other discussions when we talk about things
because
like
he's an
Darth
actor. He does
exactly. Yeah, he's the ebb and flow work. That's why it's not so jarring to me. It is over the top, and it's not my stylistic preference, but it never bothered me in the same way it has with other ones, where it would just be like frustration in like the middle of a completely calm, chill scene.
I don't mean to demean his like acting chops. He's a great actor. It's the fact that he is hammy as hell. Okay, like I mean, this is I don't know. I like, you know, I like a good narration. I'm impressed, and I admire the fact that he like goes for it. Like he goes for it, man. That takes like bravery and just like confidence and everything. I admire that, but I can't. I have to have it like almost 2 times speed to get it. Not because it takes too long, but just because it makes my skin crawl if I don't have it that way. But anyway, that's not here. That's neither here nor there, really. That's just the narration.
But it does enhance the voice, though, because the voice on the page is very strong. Like we said, he does a very good job of shifting perspectives. You don't even need to see what the context is in the chapter to know who you're reading, which is quite impressive. And again, layer that with the fact that they're so heavily interacting with the world is.
Just one little thing I want to mention too, having him do the A Long Time Ago in a Galaxy Far, Far Away opening as Darth Maul, not something I think I wanted to hear until I heard it, and I was like, "Whoa, that's interesting." I like it though. To be honest, it's like someone you didn't have to do that, but I kind of appreciate that you did.
You know, that was it.
Yeah, I'm gonna stand on my own little hill, on my own little island on this one, but that's okay. Like that's fine.
That's okay. Mileage will vary.
I'm not moving nowhere.
Let us know in the comments what you guys think in terms of style choice.
But
you're all wrong. You're all mistaken. Go home. Rethink your lives. Go.
moment rethinking.
But
Well, I will say, as far as like the overarching plot go, I think we should sort of like touch on. Basically, the entire impetus of this is Hath Monchar, who we actually saw in the Darth Maul comic, you know, a Nemoidian who broke away from the Trade Federation. Essentially, you know, he has information about the Sith, and we actually saw him in the Maul comic trying to give that to one of the Black Sun Vigos, but they thought he was crazy, so they turned him away. Little did they realize he was not crazy. They found out that very quick in a way that was less than pleasant. But basically, he's out there. Sidious realizes he's out there. He doesn't want to, obviously, their cover to be blown because this is, you know, right on the crux of them launching the blockade on Naboo. So he sends Darth Maul out to take care of this problem because they're, you know, at such a delicate period, which Maul does in gusto.
Right.
It's another Sith flying by the seat of their pants moment, and his Sidious runs from place to place trying, oh god, don't.
Well, he's running damage control for the Nemoidians, for the Nemoidians' incompetence. I mean, it's not like it's his fault.
No, not his fault at all. But it's just the constant fact that even if he does everything perfectly right, there's still so many bits of chance that could just fly in his face at the worst time.
I think just to point out that it's not written that way. It's not written in any kind of comical way. You know,
no.
It's because of, you know, and it's not. It's because it's under like the now like Legends banner. Like they make sure to like point this out in current editions that like there's going to be discrepancies between this and other stuff. So it's not really. It comes off as like quite humorous in things like Darth Plagueis, for example, which is written, you know, with this kind of in mind, like turning this into this almost like kind of farcical kind of like episode at the end of things when it's literally Plagueis and Sidious constantly shitting pants about like how things are going wrong, you know, at every turn. And this is like one of the biggest, like, you know, singular events of that, because it's right on the door of actually launching the blockade. But yeah, when it just in the time that it was written, I mean, kind of like the conceit of like the whole thing, I think, is just like Darth Maul was popular. His face was on every piece of merchandise, and he wasn't really a character on screen. So like, can we like tell a story where he does something and so people can get to know him better? I think it's the only real reason why it was written, which is kind of like a superficial motive. That being said, it worked because like 9-year-old me bought the hell out of this book.
And it's a testament to the quality where they put the effort in. It's okay to do that if you're going to put the effort into crafting a decent story.
And also being a direct follow-up to the Dark Horse Darth Maul comic, which featured the, you know, his war against Black Sun, was a really nice way of having that, you know, over.
Well, I wonder,
because the comic itself was very popular, so it makes sense that they would draw on it in whatever way they can. And there were several things in that comic that were obviously very deliberately set up, you know, to lead into this. So having that continuity,
I don't.
nice. Because in the comic, you see Hath Monchar, and then he just disappears, and you're like thinking to yourself, shouldn't someone take care of that guy? Like, that's kind of important.
I would imagine that these projects were commissioned at the same time, like they didn't exist in a vacuum from each other.
Who wrote that? Like, by the way, it wasn't Michael Reeves, right?
No, I don't remember who wrote it. It was Jan. It was like Jan Dursima's like debut as a Star Wars artist. Like that was the big selling point of it. But I can't remember who wrote it. That's really not a deep story, you know. Like we actually did do a Fanalysis of that years ago that I guess will never see the light of day. I think it's been lost to time or whatever. But anyway, maybe we'll look at that again someday. But all that happens there is Darth Maul is sent to take care of the leaders of Black Sun, and he does, except for like there's one straggler who shows up in this book and dies hilariously. But we'll talk about that in a little while. But I want to say I meant to say this before we got into like the story proper, but I think that the strength of the writing, like his style of writing, I think is probably born of his experience with television. Because what people say when they talk about praising authors for like invisible prose, I think they really want this, because it isn't purple prosy. It's not full of like, you know, crazy like long paragraphs like talking about flowery language of just like this or that, but it's quite efficient and like sort of sparse, but it is so well blended with either what you're like looking at, the overall sort of tonal idea, the atmosphere of each scene, or character perspective. And as you said, I've always said that I think that this book offers the best look at Coruscant outside of like the films themselves. For the longest time, it did. At this point, there's probably like some video game that's done really well.
Because like one of the reasons that so many people were upset that like I think it was called like 1313 game got
canceled.
Yeah, like it was almost done and they pulled it, but like it was supposed to take place all in like the lower level, and you were supposed to see all like the inner workings of Coruscant. And I would bet my bottom dollar that game was going to take some influence from the stuff established here, but I think the levels of Coruscant and just the general structure of the planet, I think has always been really appealing to fans just for its, not just its uniqueness, but just sort of how it relates to like when you have like any mega city, even in real life, you have sections that have very distinct sort of looks and feels to them. And when you're in a galaxy like this with like thousands, millions of different species, advanced technology well beyond anything we can imagine. I mean, Coruscant is basically just like Cybertron, but if like, organic people lived on it as opposed to robots, so it has so much story potential. And I think that is really appealing to a lot of people, which is also probably something that gives this book a lot of staying power, because again, Coruscant itself feels like a character, and that's not easy to do because there's a difference. But I think I've mentioned this in past reviews. When you're constructing any setting that is, big, there's a difference between making something feel big and rather than just being big. Like even if you're in Coruscant, if you don't make it feel both lived in and a place with history, a place with a culture, a place where different sections have its own sort of way of doing things, you're not going to have much reason to really, care about the struggles that are going on with the characters, even if the sort of through line itself is consistent. You see what I'm kind of getting at with that? I don't know if I just said that the best way. And I think the book really does a great job of doing it.
Yeah, I think that this book may be indirectly influenced a lot of stuff that we saw afterwards anyway, whether it was actually on Coruscant or not, because I tend to say, because everything is like the first things I think about when I like about what I like about Star Wars is always like KOTOR, for example. But KOTOR came after this, but Terrace, like going from like upper city, lower city, undercity, and the fact that there's like mutated, like disgusting golem things at the bottom, trying to get you. That I'm pretty sure, like it just feels like they ported over some of these ideas into that game. I feel like this was an influential work for like a lot of people. It feels like he was doing like the Lucino thing kind of before Lucino. You know what I mean? Because I don't know, like Lucino's first book his horrible one, Cloak of Deception. Because that's also the same.
It actually might have been that in terms of
timeline wise.
Yeah.
Because I don't know if he dealt with like the like post Return of the Jedi age at some point before that. Because I know they weren't doing NJO yet.
Yeah, but, I don't think it was far enough in NJO series
to
get to that
but I don't.
Yeah, I think it was further along.
Yeah. And Cloak of Deception does like have a lot of Coruscant influence.
It does the other. It does the other side of this plot of laying the ground, the boring part, the really boring part. Of, But having said that, I have a copy right there for whenever we want to do that someday. Not that I'm rearing to go, but anyway, because and you can't listen to it because it only exists in like a horribly abridged version of it, which this also only had for like the longest time. That's why they redid it, and so it is really cool. My misgivings about the narrator, notwithstanding, but anyway, so yeah, I like how it opens with like Newt Gunray of all characters getting like chewed out, like by the Sith Lord, like, hey, where's your friend? And he's like, he ate too much and he's got a bellyache. Yeah, and it's like
he's like, there's no way this is gonna work. There's no way this is gonna work. There's no way, and then it works. And he's like,
I like the way he's written. He's a character that I certainly never think about, but I think that it's like a really strong sense of character. You talk about like what we were talking about before, his strength of perspective and character voice. I don't care so much about the voice of like Gunray here, but like the perspective and the fact that he is just like this ball of like just nerves, like just worrywart, you know what I mean? And that's a species wide sort of trait. It's made kind of a meal of, like they're all at one point all three of them are literally like wringing their hands together, like
they're very kind of shriveled and rodent,
the most cowardly.
He does a really good job of kind of bringing the texture of that with his perspective on food and what kind of food they lean towards, and the idea of their social structure. He does a very good job in a very short page space with that character of getting us everything we need to know about the Nemoidian situation, perfectly setting up for Phantom Menace.
Yeah, it's really one of the few times you ever get his POV in really any work, you know. I mean, aside from like the Phantom Menace novel and like
Labyrinth of Evil, since it was mentioned, or we might have said that off camera, and at this point might have been edited out. But he is a perspective in that because his chair is a plot point. But
we're not joking on that, by the way. Yeah. Great, fantastic book, but it's an interesting.
I didn't think about how stupid that would sound to people who don't know, but yeah, okay. Just trust me on that. It's a thing, and it's not dumb. But well, you could argue it's pretty hilariously convenient for the plot, but it's not stupid. But anyway, the fact that I guess we needed his perspective because that's kind of what. Without that, it would be really hard. It feels like the book wants to be done with them after a certain point. And at the same time,
it makes an attempt at transitioning him away, but it kind of does just it's great. Throw it away.
Okay, so there are flaws here, right? There are flaws structurally with this book, but they're all.
I didn't even mean it's a flaw. You just feel it.
I know. I am though. I do mean to say because like I mean, we'll talk about Maui Lin in a little while, but like, I mean, there's and how like late in the game we get things like Kenobi, for example. You know, like there are things in there that are a bit. I'd be less forgiving towards. You know, like if it was written more poorly than it is, and at the same time, I feel like you kind of need. It feels like he has like epilogues, like sprinkled throughout the book. You know what I mean? And like none of them are bad scenes. It's just you're kind of like. In another book, this wouldn't make as much sense.
But to your point, like I can't believe I'm actually about to say this sentence, but I almost kind of wish we got more Gunray because this kind of because he does disappear, but he's like the whole trade federation. It's like the impetus for this whole thing, and when they're cutting back between. You know, Sidious reacts, Maul reacts, and then he reacts. I kind of like the fact that it's like different perspectives from all the. I mean, let's just say what it is. Like he is one of the main antagonists of Phantom Menace. I mean, for better or worse. So the fact that I kind of like that dynamic, honestly, but the fact that they just kind of shut that off completely, it does kind of feel like. Maybe we could have, like, again, I'm not saying.
I don't. What was it? What was it going to?
A bit more with him, you know.
What was it going to be?
I never thought I would say that about Gunray, but I'm just saying.
Let's think about what it would be, though. Like it would be like eventually there would be a phone call in which, like, they do some back and forth, and at the end of it, Sidious is like, "I know you're lying, bitch." It's just like, bye. Exactly. Like, what else would it be? Like, I mean, like, there's nothing there.
But honestly, like, I wouldn't have minded seeing that. That would have been interesting. That would have been cathartic.
Talked about what's going on in the Plagueis book. It would be leaning into that near comical aspect of Sidious like hightailing it from place to place, trying to get things sorted before this all blows up in his face. Like it would have been had to lean into some of that, but from the perspective of Newt Gunray, which would have been really funny to see because obviously he's just getting the hate and the anger and the fear aspect of Sidious across. To know what's going on in the background there on the flip side and having it kind of thread to knowing. I mean, even things like when Sidious is setting up the pickup for the holocron, etc. Having that have been more relevantly tied to what New Gunray did could have worked as well. It kind of does it with the Maui Lin thing, which is absolutely the biggest flaw of the book in terms of structure. Once they'd found out that she had died, that was like the last time we see New Gunray. There's no if it had been that kind of touchstone thing where he was the connective thread for all the looser tissues, like for example, instead of Obi-Wan, it could have been a Jedi that was reassigned from being en route to the blockade. Say Sidious had manipulated things, so a particular Jedi was sent to the blockade to be a particular level of ineffectual or something. And that Jedi was instead rerouted to deal with this problem. And then he's like, oh God, but I knew that was the one who we were supposed to be getting, and what's that going to mean? And Sidious is going to notice all these problems, that kind of thing. You could have had it be that he was the thread to make all these other structural quirks fit in a bit better.
Well, it's a horrendous idea. You can't shoehorn in Kenobi with that. But
exactly. There must be a mandate to just stick Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan in everything.
Of course there was. I mean, you know that there was.
I don't necessarily dislike what they do with him. It's just we get so little of him. It just feels kind of inconsequential.
Let's stick a pin in Kenobi, but like my only real problem with it really is send more than one fucking Padawan.
Even from the very start, why is a Padawan who's admittedly almost a knight being sent to deal with this huge problem?
It's a trial. I mean,
send some masters to shadow her so they can intervene if they need to at least.
Well, I mean, the whole thing's done. It's the initial it's the initial setup. They don't know what all this is connected. Like for them, it's just just take this guy. You know, this is a escort mission. Take him back to where he's supposed to go so we can get this information. Like on paper, that's not a very difficult task.
Okay, so why don't we just talk about? But what do they know?
Yeah, and again, it firmly establishes that she's like just on the cusp of being a full Jedi Knight. So it's not like this is like This isn't like a green Padawan.
No,
this
for
is
sure.
like...
Enough groundwork is done to make it possible, but it's just they know from their perspective that the entirety, or at least the majority of Black Sun's leadership has been wiped out, either assassinated or through infighting, and this is the one survivor who is for some reason reaching out for protection. So the question of why is that should be pretty high on their list of. Bear in mind, Black Sun is as big a deal as it is, as has been established. Funny enough, in again previous book.
Here's the thing. Here's the thing, though. He's already made his way to Coruscant. He's not that far away. Like from their perspective,
it is a 4-hour trip. Yeah, for sure. It's not like it's a long jump or anything. But just for something as important as this, send the Padawan and then shadow her with 4 masters. Job done. It's not like there aren't many in the temple just sat around available. It's not like this is the Clone Wars where they're spread thin.
I'm with you on some of it, and I'm at the same time I'm not trying to shit on it completely, because I think. Let's talk about Darsha. We'll get around to Lauren and I5, because I think technically we're going out of order here, but that's okay. It doesn't matter. We'll just talk about the opening and the middle and the end and all that. But Darsha, I think I always liked her. Don't get me wrong, but I think I like her more now than I did when I was younger, because when I was younger, I thought she's a little bit lame.
Yeah, it's the opening. End. It's the opening. She gets better as the book goes on, better and better.
No, but I think reading it now, I when I first was reading, I was 9. So I had all of the, wisdom of a 9-year-old. So what did I know? But
you were born 19, Matt, don't lie.
No. But when I look at it now, though, I can relate to I think she's probably always been way better than this up till now. And what she did was it's test day, and she freaked herself out, and she's a bad tester. Because at the end of it, she's she's standing up to Maul pretty well. It's to the point where he's crediting her in his head. There's a phrase in this moment, she's living more fully in the Force than any Jedi Master. And his you could say, what's his opinion? What does he know? That's fine. But the fact that Maul is going to compliment somebody, is pretty up there.
I really like how it excuses it all and makes it make sense.
This is the real her.
It's really beautiful.
Right. Yeah. That's the real her. She went and she's a bad tester, and she fucked up earlier when it was just the street gang. Because looking at it, they're they're the baddest ass street gang on. But when you picture what they're doing and what they look like or whatever, these are just low level goons, really.
It's Batman Beyond style I mentioned earlier as well. It's that kind
exactly
of thing.
Yeah, the Jokers exactly that. They are exactly that. When I look at it now, if I was Mace Windu, I think, and if I was familiar with her rap sheet, it's yeah, she's got this.
Yeah.
And Bandara is just he's worried because it's his Padawan, so of course he's like a parent. You know what I mean? But to me, it just makes much more sense looking at it from that perspective. It seems. Because if she's ready to graduate now, that means she's a little further along than Obi-Wan is when we first meet him, in their eyes anyway.
And we see what he thinks of her as well. So we get all of the. Don't get me wrong, I didn't mean to criticize the books, in terms of its choices. It does all of the legwork required to make this make sense, but at the same time, it is trying to make it make sense. So it's got.
I take your point. I take your point about okay, Black Sun's gone. Maybe we should send at least a couple Jedi to deal with this, and there'll just be some other trial for Darsha. But at the same time, I do think that Mace genuinely thought she could handle it, and probably on other days she probably could have. And by the end of this book, she certainly can. She's even making fun of herself for having ever been worried about these people.
That's little bit details like that. What excuse it? You can tell it was an intentional choice of the writer to have her be someone who grows within the story based on her, like you said, bad tester. But I would have liked to see, and I think it would have made the character more enjoyable for both the younger audience in particular, but also just anybody reading from the early start. I would have liked to see a little bit more of that. Some of they do put it in, absolutely, but more flourishes just to show her skill set and and her capabilities before she gets into the dip of, oh god, everything's gone wrong, this is a really bad first day, on first day on the job kind of thing.
But I will say, her character arc of not just coming to terms with herself, but also being a Jedi above and beyond just the organizational title of it, living in the Force, doing good for the sake of doing good, connecting, being comfortable with needing to make certain sacrifices. I really loved that sort of angle that they went with her. And also just the way that they weave in the Jedi code. This is one of the best uses of the Jedi code, just narratively speaking, I honestly think of any book. And the fact that she's before that is because you almost feel she with each mantra of the code, that's a point in the book where she's doing this. That's a point there is no emotion, there's peace. That's this scene. there is no, ignorance, there's knowledge. Oh, hey, that's kind of that scene later on. I love that, because even if it's not always intentional, having that be the sort of impetus for her journey, and the fact that like by the end of it, like I don't care what happens. You're a Jedi, Darth.
Oh,
Like, to me,
100%.
she's like a Jedi through and through by the end of it.
She
and
clearly would have gone on to be Kenobi level if she'd lived. Like, she's
100%,
of his
100%.
type, even in the fact that she's just taking in the Force and letting it flow with her. I love the description. Yeah, sorry, go on.
No, I was about to say you're absolutely right. I was very much getting the whole, like, when Obi-Wan's like fighting Grievous in the Revenge of the Sith novel sort of thing. He's just letting everything flow through him and just sort of reacting like, this is how a true Jedi makes war. And I really do like what they did with her with that, because yes, it is very much point A to point B to point C, but the fact that they weave it into her sort of characterization of like, oh, I'm a bad tester, I messed up. Oh, this is this other thing that comes into my life that I have to deal with. Oh, you know what? It really doesn't matter. At the end of the day, I'm worrying for nothing. Being a Jedi is more than just being a part of this, organization in this trial. I'm gonna do good, not because I want to, please the masters. I'm gonna do this because it's the right thing to do. I'm living in the Force because that's just what life is. And her sort of like I love that journey, and I think the writing style too, the sort of weaving of the first person perspective into that as she's having these revelations really makes that come across smoothly.
Yeah, speaking of the code, it was the first time I ever saw the Jedi code. Like, so for me, that was like really cool. Like, I didn't know anything. I don't know where like it really like its first debut was. Does anybody?
I think Tales of the Jedi.
Okay.
But don't quote me on that.
Okay. All right, I could see that. And I read that probably a couple years after I read this, because I was getting into like the KOTOR era, which started for me like when the game came out in 2003. But anyway, so yeah, like for me, it wasn't just like how like it didn't just feel like some stock thing to throw in there. It felt like a really like powerful piece of like lore for me, because it was brand new. And also, as you just said, she like takes the time to like, I don't want to say like explain it, but like put it into action, or like really make real use of it. You know what I mean?
She's living it.
Remind herself of what's really important, like
Right.
and it helps guide her, but not in like a creepy doctrine way, like she's been indoctrinated and has no thoughts, which is like what people think of the Jedi, including some fans. It feels like she's really using it as like a meditative exercise to guide her way through like this the worst moments of this quest, and she loses a lot really fast
for herself as well. Like, she takes that personal level and adapts to it, rather than just like you said on the dogmatic thing. She's okay. So this is what my master has always meant by this. This is kind of the truth of it, rather than I'm just going to recite it because it's just what I've been told.
It is very much kind of like what Bane does with the Sith code in the first Darth Bane book, where it's like in the words and live the words. But it is obviously in a dark side sort of context. I'm just using that as a point. And obviously, I'm also very
point out how stupid all the other ones are.
I'm just referencing the first book with that one, because that's where it's done the best. But
but it's as you were mentioning though, like her first appearance, like and pretty much like for the first like 2/3 of her character, she's constantly like denigrating herself and putting like all the other Jedi up on this pedestal, where like at the same time what she's saying is not untrue. They are all as impressive as she says they are, but at the same time you can really tell like the self-esteem thing is like a hurdle for her, and then you watch her get over that, and like she, as you said, she finds her way up into that echelon or that pantheon kind of naturally through following the Jedi way, and like just like by walking it, like not just talking it, but actually walking it.
I would have liked to.
And there's a difference between like most powerful Jedi and like most impressive Jedi. She's a really impressive one by the end. She's like Aaron Lanier for me, a different kind of character and in a little bit of a different way, but I like her just as much. Like I wanted to say before we get too far into this, one of my favorite quotes from Aaron Lanier is like how the Jedi had like failed, like and they'd messed this up, but they hadn't like lost themselves in doing so. She said that they had failed, but they'd done it nobly, and there was something in that. You know what I mean? And so it doesn't give you license to go turn to the dark side and say screw everything. You know what I mean? I really like, and Aaron feels a lot more. Darth's just not tempted by the dark side in this story, but Aaron is in her story. I like how they both reach this like sort of natural kind of thematic terminus point of like, whatever comes will, and I'll be ready to meet it in my own way, kind of a thing. And I haven't completely like lost it, you know.
Yeah.
So I really like these two characters. I did a video a long time ago, speaking of old videos of like underrated Jedi, and both of them were on it for me because I think that they're really cool.
Well,
I think the only reason that they are underrated is because they're in a book and not something people can watch, because I think they'd be much more like loved, you know, if more people knew about their stories. But anyway, what were you going to say?
Yeah, well deserved. I mean, she goes through the journey of becoming a Jedi in this book. The trajectory and the story of that's chosen for her character arc is to become what she's trying to pass the test for in the first place with her trial. It's part of the reason it kind of fails in the early sections for me is that the way she's failing is almost comical in the way it's being depicted. You know, with like I say, the Joker style gang with the raptors and the literally climbing the rope as she's getting attacked by hawk bats, and it's like, oh god, like if this was just like cuts to a that's equal parts horrifying and comical.
We'll get to that in a second, but like I see what you're going for. Like they do really ratchet up the failure aspect before getting into her eventual rise. And for some people, and I see your point. Like for some people, it is so in your face that it can come off as a little bit of jarring.
It's borderline slapstick at points, but and I don't mean to make it like a criticism, because it's just that has the unfortunate effect of kind of changing the tone of your perspective of our early character. But as soon as you put that aside, though, from that point on, she's only getting better and better and better and more enjoyable on top of that. While also never being someone who started weak and got strong. You know, she was who she is at the end at the start. She just needed to learn it herself. There was a few moments in the story where, and this is I think something that could have been helped earlier as well. There's a few notes where characters will talk to her about that, and particularly I5 will mention to her like, well, I mean, as much as I love my ego stroked, you were the one who got us out of that. You know, I would have loved to see more
of my favorite bits.
Few flourishes like that to show that was the intent of the writer, because it's definitely there. But we didn't get to enjoy that fact as early in the book as we could have done.
Yeah.
Can I just say the borderline comedic sort of like element of this I think applies to all characters, like just how badly these 2 days are going to everybody.
Yeah, exactly.
So that was the other thing, is that it's evenly distributed to each character, including Darth Maul, as we hinted at earlier when we first opened up here.
It never really stops for him, but right. Sorry, one second, Evan. On top of that, Evan, just because I know we're about to jump in the plot side as well and get back on track, but the structuring as well is very heavy. Like if you just listen to the like 2 hours of the book, in the first 2 hours of the book or so, it feels like a complete story by itself, and then it kind of completely separates from that and becomes its own. You know, the chase kind of gets started properly. So it's good. It's impressive to see that much of compressed kind of storytelling with everything going on with even just things like what's his name, the Watto, brain's gone.
Zipper.
That's the one. Yeah. Is it Toydarian? Toydarian, right?
Zippo,
is it Toydarian?
Yeah, I was thinking Toydarian was wrong. It is Toydarian. That's why I said Watto. Anyway, I mean, that just goes away. Like all of this stuff, the amount of storytelling that happens in those early chapters that isn't part of the main story without it feeling disconnected and disjointed, with the exception of Marilyn, obviously, which we'll get to.
Right.
Very solid. Yeah, Marilyn is the one exception, but everything else.
We'll talk about Marilyn.
Everything else, he dips in and out very well without ever feeling bogged down or like the structure's failing. So very impressive there.
And before we get into the main plot, I just want to sort of add on to something you said just a second ago, kind of like with the comparisons, when you mentioned Darsha and like Maul. What I do like, I don't know if this was intentional, but I do like how you could sort of draw a parallel between Darsha and Maul, in the sense of like her journey is sort of about, with her, the Jedi Code and like her place in the Order is like coming to terms with the fact that like, no, I am more than just this, organization. Being a Jedi is just, more beyond that. She's sort of what's the phrase? Coming to terms with her own independence, whereas you juxtapose that to Maul's POVs, where it's very much mission, master, Sith. There is nothing else. There will never be anything else. I am what I am because of my master, and nothing else matters. Like I am completely locked into this, and I do not live any other way. Again, I don't know if it's intentional, but like you have the sort of the freedom juxtaposed to the complete servitude sort of thing. It's a nice little juxtaposition that you could read a lot into that and come to some interesting conclusions. And I'm not saying it's like Maul, for example, he doesn't like do the same thing with the Sith code that like she does with the Jedi code. I think that would have been a little too on the nose, but I do like
similar things though.
But you can sort of read into that and come to some interesting like conclusions, like Like
he has
you do get,
philosophical musings about like a
yeah.
concept like discipline or pain or what like these things that are core to his life and progression as a Sith. He does similar things. So structurally, he's able to play with the same device. He's just not literally reciting the code of the Sith. And as you said, they lead him to different positions in life and different perspectives and senses of self.
And it does like make you wonder, like, oh, like in a different universe, what could have Maul have been, or like, oh, in a different, like, what could have Darsha have become if she had like lived through this, for example, things like that. Like, I like how you could those parallels are there, but it's not so in your face that the writer is trying to like, oh, hey, think about this. Like, no, it's there. And you can interpret it in your own way, and that's really that's something like really any good writer should do, with any sort of piece. So I appreciate
it's like a subtle take on symmetry. You know what I mean? It's like it's there and it's pretty clear, but it's not horrendously obvious, and it's not it's not diminishing anything by it being there. Like it's not like ham-fisted or shoehorned in. It feels natural to do.
And it's an enhancement. It's not the point of the story as well, which I think is the right choice for this particular kind of character, because this is supposed to be Darth Maul's, a focused.
Well, that's the thing. So. I bought it because as a kid, because it had Darth Maul's face on it. But I like everyone in it. I like him in it,
and it's equal parts as well. The time is spent equally on all of them for the most part, but probably a shade more Maul technically. But you don't feel that way. It feels like as much Pavan's and Darsha's story as his. But one last thing on Darsha before we move on, is that one of my favorite moments for her in the story was the fact that she came to an acceptance that she'd been struggling with up to this point, about halfway, I think, where she was saying, even if I'm no longer a Jedi by the end of this day, if I'm stripped of my title and ranks, etc., it doesn't matter because I will go on to serve the Force. I understand the teachings now. I understand what Master Bandara was trying to teach me all this time. I will go on to serve, the light, and that's enough. Just that level of acceptance, even at that early stage, before she gets the kind of metaphysical acceptance and experience of the Force as a physical thing, being able to take it into herself as on a spiritual level. The fact that we have those two kind of separate understandings and zeniths for her character, it helped pace the kind of progression for her journey along throughout the story very effectively for me, and it made, apart from anything else, just on a plot level, made her kind of decision making fit more naturally, and even just the ability and willingness to face more. Like other characters or other timing, even this character at different times, what you'd think, why are you doing that? Stupid, don't do that. But it makes sense. It feels natural. It feels earned, and just in story terms feels right. In a way that it might not otherwise if you hadn't spent that time. So really appreciate all of that. Love the character.
It never comes off as contrived. Like even in moments where you very much feel like this is a sequence that necessitates, the broader scope of the plot, because we know Phantom Menace happens. You never feel like it's again, like I've used this phrase several times in our reviews. You never feel like the pen is like behind the character's head as they're doing things. The setup makes sense in the context of the overarching narrative, which I know sounds like a very simple thing that like, every writer should do that. Well, unfortunately, not every writer does. So,
and particularly not in this constrained story. Like there are certain things these characters can't do, and the reader knows they can't do it going into it. So with the exception of those last 15 pages that we've alluded to earlier, and we'll talk about further in the discussion, you're absolutely right. He perfectly navigates around that and avoids all the usual landmines you have to worry about as a writer.
Absolutely, and it makes the sequences feel earned, even if you know very well or can tell very well where it's ultimately going to lead.
So excuse us for jumping around a bit here, but this is probably one that's best talked about in like character sections rather than from plot sequence to plot sequence. So pivoting to Lorne Pavan now, guys, where are we with him? Do you reckon?
Yeah, he sort of gets the ball rolling for us on Coruscant. He is a character who he and his, well, I say his droid, that I was going to say that they make a point of pointing out that R5 does not belong to him. His partner,
his business partner,
his business partner. Like we clarify what kind of partner we're talking about here. But so he, I think he's like we talk about how they have to shoehorn in this era Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan into everything. Later on, it becomes Anakin and Obi-Wan get shoved into stories where they don't necessarily need to be, but they come. This is our Han Solo stand-in, but he's a solid character. Like he's a really, really solid character on his own. He's even from Corellia, also.
Yes, I noticed that as well. Okay,
it's like if you're Corellian, I guess you're just automatically just a swashbuckler.
He couldn't have been Coruscant. He couldn't have just been a local. Come on, guys.
DNA, I guess. Weird.
Yeah. You just got business connections and shady. You're streetwise, and you got a kind of roguish. Yeah,
even they're senators.
Yeah, and you have an unusual, partner who helps you with all your deals that people are mildly afraid of for, different reasons.
The finger guns.
But anyway, yeah.
It's the finger guns. Even
Oh,
at
yeah,
one
that's
point
brilliant.
points it out in the pros. It's like, come on, man. We were all thinking it.
Like
You
a
don't have to put it on
child,
pro.
like playing a game. But what I will say is like it's really smart what they do with him, because I like how upon his introduction, you initially feel like, oh, okay, I know instantly what this guy's entire deal is. He's the swashbuckling, drunk who hates everyone and everything from some inexplicable reason, and he's gonna screw things up, but he's still gonna help. But it's like, I like how they tee that up, but then they reveal that there's a lot more layers to him.
I was going to say,
like
you say that there was a lot of mystique to him, even early on. Like
but I'm saying that as a strength.
Yeah,
I think that's
sure.
a very smart, writing quirk, because, and they even do that like upon his introduction, like when the holocron, comes up and you instantly see him like get like super defensive about like the mention of the Jedi, and like it's so jarring it makes you wonder like what's going on. It's a really good flip to the mystery.
That whole scene, by the way, like that feels as well written as something like what this guy worked on, Gargoyles, Batman the Animated Series. It's like it's sort of like crime alley noir kind of setup, right? Which is a scene that this guy's done a billion times in various works, but he energizes it with that Star Wars like flavor. It feels like it belongs specifically in Star Wars, like this particular kind of slime like feels like something out of like Jabba's palace, right? But just on Coruscant. But as you said, without actually telling us what it is, and we're in his perspective, it's the same kind of thing that impresses me, not to go off on a tangent about A Song of Ice and Fire, but when Martin is using like Ned Stark, like for example, and he thinks about the past and how much he's able to preserve that. Yeah, he preserves the horror and tragedy of Ned's past while still being in Ned's head without actually telling you what it is. And he gets away with doing that for 11 entire chapters. That takes incredible writing craft, like skill. So I won't say it's quite the same achievement here, because it's comparatively small amount of time spent with Lorne Pavan, but you get the sense of like real like something happened, something that's no joke, something that he feels, and because he's like got like that sort of cavalier, sort of roguish charm to him at the start, it's almost a surprise that he feels anything on that level at all.
Exactly.
So even without knowing what it is, it's still got that power, like driving your curiosity as a reader, because it's really well done, even knowing what it was, because I read this book a lot, so I never forgot what his motivations were in life, but even knowing what it was, I admired how the author was able to work that in there so skillfully.
And the beautiful thing to me was the fact that he hands you out very, very carefully little tidbits about it that change your perspective, because when he starts talking about it in the initial part of the story, it's not that it doesn't fit, it absolutely does, but it doesn't tee up the expectation of what it actually is that he's got the grievance over. It leads you to think, okay, so maybe he was a Jedi, maybe he was working for the Jedi. Okay, so maybe they just fired him, maybe he fell in love and the partner was cut off, or what was it? It gives you these kind of bits that don't fit together quite so naturally as you'd expect. And it has a real kind of whoa, completely different to what we were expecting and what we know of the character's style and tone and archetype, etc. That didn't fit. That's a really cool choice.
That's a really good thing, because it comes up from a joke of the person, like of Zippa. He brings it up in dialogue. It isn't, as everyone knew, Lorne despised the Jedi for personal. You find out about it when Zippa finds out. Like he makes a joke. Are you a secret Jedi? And then that's when he turns like on a dime. And it's a long beat, and it feels like screenplay. Like it feels like you should be watching this. Absolutely. I think they could still make this into a movie, like more or less. Like if they wanted to 100%. Turn it into a prequel,
to make a fortune,
it feels like a really good movie. Yeah.
I definitely, the only thing that I would have done with it is I would have amplified it, because the reveal of the fact that it was his son or a child in general that was taken from him, and that's why he hates him. That reveal to me could have been like way up in scale. That could have been, and in my opinion, probably should have been something in his perspective. He was, or someone in his dialogue rather. He should have revealed that in like an emotive kind of argument or just shout.
I don't know.
I would have liked to see.
I like the way it's done. I like the way it's done in this.
More sense though. I think it's
not that it's revealed earlier. I mean, the timing of it's revealed is good. I just mean that the way it happened is kind of like it's a discussion between the two of them behind. It felt like it could have been more punchy that moment.
That's so. To me, it's just so different. You know what I mean? Like I like the idea. I want to talk about that scene later. Can we talk about that later? Like just when it happens. Like yeah. But anyway.
having that initial tee up, like I like the fact that they immediately break expectations, and that sort of leads into his, overarching, characterization, and also like the sort of established, like before he was this rogue, like he worked in finance, which gives him a particular set of skills that he is able to apply to working in the underworld. They also bring up the fact that like nobody survives as long down here in these levels as he has without having being able to think on his feet and have certain degree of skills that really help him thrive. Again, it's telling you it's characterization of the planet, again, like I keep saying, without it being too overt. And again, I like how they use the characters as the vessel for that sort of world building. Again, very nice to see.
He's a peak example of that as well, because we've got the kind of more naive academic understanding of it from the Jedi and learning, oh, this is what it's like. I mean, I knew this was here. It never really registered me that it was here. Actually here though, this is all just hearsay and academic learning. He's the person who's living through it day by day, and as we joked about earlier, this is a particularly bad set of days for these characters, because he's just
every character.
You have him introduced as like this suave Han Solo, kind of got things under control, and then the very next chapter is like, oh, I'm fucked up. Oh my god, that was 15,000 credits. And Zipper's just off partying somewhere.
The reason why that works so well is because of I-5, like the perfect banter, like between the two of them on that one. But and that they've done it before, but it's clearly like not every day is like this. It's because he fucked up so badly, and he knows it. He knows that
exactly.
He had like a stack of credits. He had like 15,000. It wasn't like if he hadn't gotten screwed over so badly through like his temper getting the better of him and him threatening the Toydarian, he wouldn't be as desperate as he is, as he needs to be to go along with everything else that goes on from this point. So it's a nice way of like getting him that primed for this adventure. I love this scene also. I know we're bouncing around in terms of actually scene to scene stuff. It doesn't matter too much, but I love the actual hangover cure scene. And, for many reasons. Like I love that it's sort of putting an end to like the whole drunken stage of it, like snapping us back into action. It's just kind of fun and trippy that like his droid has like that ability, like and can kind of like calm him in that way, and or make him feel better through like this sort of like psychic like massage, or a sonic kind of massage kind of a thing. And it tees up being able to use it as a weapon later in the story, so it's not just random, completely out of place. And then it's also funny to me that like they get like just voice messages from Hutts and like people ready to make a deal, and it just feels like domestic and also almost a little silly and over convenient at the same time. It's very like there's something charming about it, and I buy it all. Like the biggest probably conceit of just like the whole thing is the fact that Half Monchar is looking for this guy. Like of all people he could be looking for. Is there no one else on Coruscant you could take this information to and turn a buck? Like no one? Like, you know what I mean? Like you have to bring it here to this guy.
He tried with Black Sun, and we saw how that worked out. So maybe
but this is Coruscant. Sir. Like you can't find anybody. Like and I guess he's trying to be like super on the DL here and like not deal with anyone who runs in social circles similar to his, but he's like a big wig at the trade fair. He's like deputy viceroy or something. Right? Like I mean, he's up there, man. You can't find some before, and also before you got here, you couldn't like put your feelers out before you landed on planet. It's like, I wonder if anybody knows somebody I could hawk this to. Yeah.
Also, just one separate note. This may just me completely losing it, but holocrons are not necessarily at this point, but are established within lore to only be able to be interacted and infused by Force users, right? Or is that just the case that they need to be there to make the thing? Because everybody in this is just flicking around a holocron like it's nothing. Like it's just a USB.
Well, even the book kind of like pays lip service to that, and yet we have instances of a non-Force user like the Hutts, good example, being able to.
I like the beat of him being able to interact with it, because it shows he's up there in the echelons. He's got that kind of know-how, and he's ancient. I like the way it works within that, but I wasn't sure, and it wouldn't matter anyway because who cares?
I think he's treating it. I mean, given the time it was written and what was established at the time, I think he's treating it more like an incredibly complex Rubik's Cube kind of encrypted device rather than a Force object. I don't think he had that. If that's an actual flaw overall, like literally, because I don't even know for sure whether that's the case.
I couldn't remember whether I'm just misremembering it, but it wouldn't matter at all. It was just a curiosity.
It's a completely
are these people just all secretly Force sensitives?
Yeah. Also, I mean, like it's implied like it's a Sith style holocron, so you can maybe argue that the construction is a little different, and that might have something to do with it as well. But yeah.
Well, that would be a flaw because it would be pyramidal, wouldn't it? It'd been based on a large law, but that's all post this. So,
presumably,
I mean, Sith holocrons don't necessarily have to be.
No, but I mean generally they're described as that, aren't they? It's not, and it doesn't matter anyway. This is all just a trivial thing. But I mean,
just this will be like the last comment, and just moving on. Like, if they're calling it a Sith holocron, right? Like the one that's got the data plans on it. Why would the Sith have given them to any of the Neimoidians if they couldn't work it?
Well, exactly.
You know what I mean? So, like, okay, yeah, all right. So, I mean,
maybe it was I guess you could argue maybe it was a modified holocron. Like they wanted something that.
Yeah, there's loads of hand ways of doing it.
As the holocron
this is pure nerd curiosity. Yeah, this is just nerd curiosity. I was because obviously the way time it was written, it may just have not been the case anyway, or never was a problem that people who were forced. I was just in my head. I was thinking that the holocrons could only be interacted with as well as made by Force sensitives, but. Yeah.
Although
whatever that is.
To be fair, like it is a little, it is kind of unintentionally comedic when you factor in like what happens in the Plagueis novel to this, because there's a sequence where Palpatine comes back holding the holocron, shows it to Plagueis, and you're there like you're just in a room with a bunch of senators and Jedi, and Palpatine's just casually holding a Sith. Like you realize if one of the Jedi had turned around and seen you holding that you would have
Doesn't he make?
Doesn't he make?
It's like again, it's like I'm not saying it's a flaw. It's just a funny thought.
Doesn't he make a joke about handing it off to like Mace or Yoda or somebody who's here? Like, I think he makes a joke about that. Yeah, because he walks back into the party. It out in the open.
I'm just saying, like,
he's walking around with it, and like Plagueis is like, "Isn't that thing Maul already had?" It's like, guess he fucked up. Like, kind of like just like like in Sith language, you know what I mean? But it's just like
also
and Plagueis just can't believe it.
It's also worth pointing out too, like obviously this was released before Attack of the Clones, so Sidious being Palpatine is not something that the book ever like directly. I mean, obviously, like towards the end, it's implied like when he gives it to Palpatine, you're like, oh no. But I'm just saying it's never stated word for word. So it's
we'll talk about again. We'll get to the last 15 pages when we get there. But yeah, I was just like, oh, you bastard. But yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to derail us with any of that, but it was a curiosity in my head. I was like, this is weird.
Bring it back to like the main plot, like with the sequence when he like cures them. By the way, I5, I mean, what more can you say? He's like,
what a droid.
Yeah, he's like top 5 droids for me, ironically, given his designation. He is.
I think that he's been stolen several times. Like I think because he predates HK-47, who's the more famous version of this, and more over the top with like the evil and sarcasm and all the rest of it, you know, and like bloodlust. Yeah, he's great. He is great. But I will never not believe that, you know, I5 didn't influence HK-47. And then also the one I can't remember who you just told me from. Yeah. I always got strong I5 vibes from him. But yeah, like I love I5
audiobook as well. Absolutely perfect choice of voice for that.
But to your point though, like I like even though you've seen this sort of archetype from other droids, you know, he's still like an absolute gem of a character. He's so unique. It really touches on I mean even things like him, you know, having his circuit ethics sort of thing like rewired, so like he's as close to like sentience as a droid can be. I mean, obviously that opens up a lot of like, you know, ethical discussions about like Star Wars and
how they bring that up. I mean,
it's interesting, but really I really do like what they do with him. You know,
I wouldn't call it a plot point, but it's in like enrichment of setting and character in this. It's like it's along with things like the fact that like the Toydarians have like sweet smelling BO that is like pleasant to human noses, for example. You know, it's just one of those things that's in there that you didn't need, but it's fun. Because I like when in the drunken scene when they're in like the cantina, there's like a Duros or something. Like when I5's like, you've had enough, let's go home, and he's like, you let your droid decide when you've had like enough to drink? Like what the fuck? Like, and he's like, he's my partner. He's like, you're telling me he's a citizen? Just like he can't. And he's like genuine, like really? Like I did like tell me more. And at the same time, this is absurd, kind of a thing, you know. But it's just really fun stuff. But and also, I mean, we're getting ahead of ourselves with. I don't necessarily want to drop this in here, but when you find about I5's past, it's actually oddly heartbreaking for such an infinitesimal piece of the story. It has nothing to do with anything, but it's really, really like well done. We can talk about it more when we talk about that scene, because that's the one with like the whole like revelations about the past and everything with Lorne and everything. So we'll talk about that one after a while.
But like basically like he helps Lorne sober up, and they basically decide that they need to do something or to get credits now because of the hole that you know, Pavan unintentionally dug himself into, and that's kind of leads into their eventual, you know, desire to meet with Monchar to get the holocron for, you know, for credits. So that's kind of how everyone kind of converges.
Also, a lesson: always clear your voicemails, people, because Maul never would have found them in the first place if it wasn't for that. Talk about a tiny little note of contrivance there, but absolutely fine. It was just a frustration. It's like, just clear your voicemail. Maul's screwed.
Well, you know what's funny though? I think it's really hilarious how like in the moment where they're like, you know, kind of like bucking up and getting ready to like get back up on the horse and give it a good old try, a Sith Lord is coming to knock on your door. Like, imagine that they had just like dallied a little and hadn't left the house when they did. Like,
you know what I mean? Door, and then we basically get the hospital scene at the very end of the book, just early on. It's like, that's it, done.
Pretty much.
The Force has a cruel sense of humor in this story.
Yeah. Still, though, I mean, the motivations for, you know, all of these elements, you know, converging, you know, Hathmanchar very publicly putting out that has some data, you know, he's looking for credits, and then very purposefully. It's also like I mentioned this before, but it's established that Pavan used to work particularly in finance, so he has a particular, you know, eye for like deals, money making, and you know, currency transfer and stuff like that, which actually leads into the bank fraud, you know, segment, which we'll, you know, get to shortly as well. But again, I like how they work in the characters' backstories and just their sort of quirks as a means of driving all of these characters together, because it doesn't feel contrived. You understand
the weakest part of it is Hathmanchar contacting Lauren at all, like, to me. Like, but that's one of the you have to hand wave that so that the story has anywhere to go. You know, you just go along with it. Really? But yeah, in a perfect world, if this was like if there's like either a longer series of books or like something that felt a little bit less like its own one-off, I would have preferred some stronger connection between Lauren and Monchar.
It would have been relatively simple as well, because all it would have had to been was that he was going for Garth. Is it the hut? He was going to him first, and Garth then handed it off to Pavan. Like, he was like, "Get this for me."
Yeah, like, well, I mean,
wants it,
so
you know,
what it was he literally. Again, this is a guy who is like absconded with something that belongs to a Sith Lord. Is like, I'm gonna sell this and start a new life somewhere, right? And his big plan was, I'm gonna fly to Coruscant and go to like the nearest dive bar and ask the local bartender, who should I sell this to?
Yeah,
like that is the weakest bit. That's the weakest thing, right?
You should have had a bad idea.
At
the start of it. No, right. I know a hut. He'll buy this from me. You know,
he did say he was aware that there was Yanth the hut, but for whatever reason, he decided to go with Lauren first. Maybe he thought Garth, that was more. Garth, his name was Yanth the Hut.
I thought for some reason I thought it was Garth. It's Garth, isn't it? Anyway,
it's a different story. But anyway, so at this point, what's going on here is we have let's just set the table here, right? Or like set up the pieces on the board. So hilariously, even if Maul had like done everything right, if we just imagine that Darsha had accomplished her mission, he still would have been found out because Wolf the Fondorian had this information. So like that's one thing, right? Like, let's just leave that off to the side. So Darsha is off dealing with Ulf. We'll talk about that soon. The Nymordians have realized they need to do something because they told a big fat lie to Sidious and they have no leads. So they decide Rune Hako decides to hire a bounty hunter. There's like this funny scene where he has to bring the idea, and it's like embarrassing to, like, we talk about like the social hierarchy of like Nymordians and like, you know, saving face and how embarrassing it is to even be associated with any kind of, I think they use the word personage such as a bounty hunter. So it's a fun little scene. And also because like the Nymordians don't really like each other, which you don't get a sense of on screen, like at least in the movies. I don't know what they're like in cartoons because I don't really pay too much attention to those. But so that was like the most character I got out of like Hako and Newt for like a long time, like before like Labyrinth of Evil came out or Revenge of the Sith or whatever, the book I mean to say. But so they've hired Maui Lin. She gets involved by, she's competent, right? But she's in like 3 scenes is the funny thing. And one of them is like a literal paragraph. So she's kind of like a paragraph of a character. Well, I guess we'll cover her soon. But then Lauren, Pavan, and I5, they decide they meet with Hathmanchar in like the dive bar. And they're like, okay, we'll do the handoff. But it's going to happen an hour later. Yeah, like there's only an hour, right? So they have to rustle up 500,000 credits, I think it is. So they have to go figure out how they're going to go do that. And in the meanwhile, I guess
Darth Maul
that's when
obviously
Darth Maul. Yeah, Darth Maul is just kind of like he can't act too fast. He finds everybody pretty quickly, but he doesn't know if he kills one too early. He doesn't know that he'll find the other. He's got to make sure everything he does makes sense. It's just like an unfortunate chain of misery, kind of like, keeps upsetting his chase. It's like, it's got this. I've said this before. It's like a Terminator movie. Like he's more threatening than everybody, but some obstacle keeps getting in his way from taking out this ostensibly quite easy target. And then at some point the Jedi get involved, i.e. Another Terminator, like in Terminator 2, and everything that ripped that off afterwards. But anyway, and then so like, why don't we stick a pin in that? We'll come back around to that. Let's talk about what goes wrong with Darsha. I guess we already kind of did, but then she goes back to like Ulf, like he's can we talk about his death scene though?
Like some guy who got away in the comic.
Is there like an opposite of winning the lottery? I think he hit it.
Blowing your money on tickets.
It's again, going back to that fact, it's kind of comical. It's a horrific death, obviously, and it's really like traumatic for the fact that Darsha has to live through this, and and know that it was kind of sort of her fault in a way, in terms of her, from her duty's perspective. But at the same time, it's just like, okay, so that went from bad to worse very rapidly. And just the idea that she's like flying up on the grappling hook at the time with these random nobodies that turn up to start shooting at him, who have absolutely no relevance to the rest of the plot. Like, they were theoretically set up to be the antagonist of her story at the start of this, right? These were people who go and try and kill him, and that she was getting them away from the protection that he needed from. And then they just vanish off. Like they we got him, and then we'll move off.
Yeah.
And not have anything to do with anything.
Also, well, because we needed somebody to kick her so her comlink in her pocket breaks.
Oh yeah, exactly. Yeah. Oh my god, the amount of times in this story that I'm just like, pick up the bloody phone. Seriously, just someone send an email to the Jedi. He's in the taxi. Just send an email to the Jedi.
Okay, but just most of those times, I think it does a pretty good job of covering ass. They're in the sewers. They're fighting the Sith or whatever. I get that
for sure.
It's the fact that after this failure, she goes back to the temple and never like restocks with like a new comlink. And I get. Bandara was like, we got to go get on this now. It's really important that we make sure that this guy can't be saved. Just tell somebody where you're going. It's already a failure. It's already been a failure. Tell somebody where you're going and why and what has already happened, and grab another fucking phone. Yeah, please. Because that's the one thing. Can I just say that a little bit of a tangent? Like 24, which was a show that I loved at the time that this was being made. Kiefer Sutherland, like can't even take it seriously now when you look at current U.S. politics, and like the idea that the government is anywhere close to that. Yeah, anywhere close to that competent, or well-meaning even. Can't even believe that. But that show, the whole premise was it's like in real time, right? So like, and so every minute and every season was like a full 24 hours, right? So even though you had things like commercial breaks, like the time was like, something was happening during those commercials, right? So every minute really counted. Yeah, like really every minute counted. So that means that to put our characters in constant jeopardy or prevent them from getting where they needed to be, you had to be just like throw everything at the wall in terms of obstacles. And there's one season in particular, I think it's season 2, where one of our main characters, I won't say who, just in case anybody wants to watch this, spoiler free someday. One character ends up starting their day at work as a nanny for somebody who turns out to have killed his wife, tries to save the child, ends up like at a hospital with child because child has been abused by father. While their father comes looking for them, calls boyfriend to help. Boyfriend knows like taekwondo or jujitsu or something, and like kicks father in the face, and they steal father's car. Then they end up getting chased by police. To evade the police, they do some weird reckless maneuver and end up crashing car. It starts on fire. Now is tromping through the woods, gets stuck in a fucking bear trap, and then gets rescued by a nut job with a bomb shelter, who then lies about the fact a nuclear bomb has gone off, so it feels like can't leave. Escapes that scenario. It ends up at a convenience store that gets robbed. I mean, there's like, there's so many things happening. Like you just can't believe it. You know what I mean? You cannot believe it. This is on the line. All of these characters have a day like that, which is funny. Like it handles it pretty gracefully, considering that's what's going on. But especially Maul, like for Maul, like that's got to feel like what it's like. You know what I mean? Like just a day like that. But yeah, I really like the fact.
Pretty accurate, given like the timetable of this entire.
Yeah, it's only 2 days.
Yeah, exactly. Roughly over 2 days.
Yeah, it's like 2 days.
Yeah, but so there's a but that said, I just shat on the fact that she didn't grab her phone. I love the fact that like you don't get much of Anun Bandara, but I really, really like him. And I love the fact that when she comes to report failure, he's just like, "Well, I'm glad you're okay." Like that. That's like he's like a parent. You know what I mean?
The pause
he's
for
such
2
a
minutes
perfect
was
parent.
very amusing as well. He's like,
the personalization between him
just sits there for like 2 minutes, looks down. He's, well, I'm glad you're okay.
Yeah. But I mean, that's a Jedi version of like a bear hug, though.
Yeah,
you know what I
exactly.
mean? It's like he is very much like, because she was so freaking out about being like disowned, over the shame of this or whatever. It's just I love how he broke the tension with that, and then it's like at the same time we got to go deal with this. But please tell somebody where you're going, please, and get another phone when you don't because they point out the fact that it can be used to trace your position, so you can use it for like a signal flare kind of.
No,
like
that's
a GPS
another
tracker,
part about this.
like,
You kind of have to hand wave. Yoda is on world at this point, and he's like, "I censored this. No, it's fine. Must be nothing."
Okay, but so if you wanted to get on that, you have to question the whole core premise.
I know. It's the shrouding. Plagueis made that all make sense with the shrouding thing anyway. But it's always funny to think like less than 10 miles away is a Dark Lord of the Sith doing Dark Lord of the Sith things. Jedi are dying, and it's like.
Every time they go to the Chancellor's office, sir. Okay?
I know.
Like every time. Okay.
If you're gonna complain about that, you gotta complain about everything. So it's infuriating, but it's just
Dooku escapes Geonosis to fly back to Coruscant for his meeting with Sidious. Okay,
like it's just
in the same ship that they left in Attack of the Clones. No less.
Highly recognizable, unique ship. Too.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
With a massive collapsing folding sail as well.
Yeah.
How many people have solar sailors? Just period. but again, that's neither here. Yeah, but. That again, that's really the only time, one of the few times I think where like the things going wrong is legitimately like, oh, you just happen to get kicked by this one guy, and it just so happened to break your comm. By the way, that's a pretty brittle comm link of one.
Yeah, I was thinking that. Yeah, pretty sure my phone could
shatter
a kick to the chest.
Yeah, I'm just saying. So that's the one time where, it becomes a little bit frustrating. But also at the same time, like the sequence where they're getting swarmed by the hawk bats is pretty horrifying. Getting pecked and slashed to death. Falls to his death. It's like, whoa, it's pretty brutal. Like to your point earlier about like this being a more adult story, Matt, like we get some gore at various points. It's not like Darth Bane, levels, but you definitely remember them.
There's a lot of beheadings. There's a lot of beheadings. Yeah.
That's another thing with like the descriptors. They often bring up how eager Maul is to cut people's heads off.
I liked the tone it puts into that at the end though, where it's like, they gave me some trouble. Like they fought well. I'll give them a quick death. Like that was a nice little. I always like it when they lean on Maul's honor code. Even though occasionally just like he throws out the window because he's furious, but then it comes back again afterwards when he calms down a bit. I always enjoy that.
Yeah.
Well, although it is kind of morbid that Maul's description of a quick death is cutting someo's head off. I mean, I guess it's a very Maul way.
Oh my god, if he paraded it to Sidious as well when he meets, that would have been hilarious in that context. It's just like, yo, Sidious, and he's like, the music just stops and all the senators just turn to him walking out the hatchway with the head in his hand.
He says that he was going to do that. Yeah, that would have been a little much. Again, when you bring Plagueis into that context, the whole situation.
Looking forward to it.
Having said that, it's slightly nothing to do with that, but I like that like when he was using the like information terminal, he thought about the fact that his appearance is like capable of turning heads even on Coruscant.
Yes,
he doesn't know that. Like oh, I stick out in a crowd, And they even say that in the Plagueis book. Like there was a bit where before they realized things had gone wrong, they're at that party and like Plagueis is like, what's up, like Sidious, and Sidious is like, well, here's the plan. He's gonna hand me the holocron and everything. He's like, here? I mean, he kind of stands out, and he's like, no, he's not here, like in the basement or somewhere, like kind of a thing. Yeah, but I mean, even Plagueis is like, don't bring him to the party. Like we can't explain him. Yeah, kind of a thing. But
I love the legwork done in that part of the book to make all this make sense. It's brilliant.
Yeah. But to get to like the bank heist real quick, just like let's explain that one.
Like they need money. So I like how they, again, to the characterization I mentioned before, I like how they combined Pavan's past experience as a financier with obviously I5's technology capabilities and experience. They kind of blend that into this heist because they established that this is something that they've considered doing in the past. It's not just like thinking out of the blue sort of thing. Again, saying a lot with a little, and it ultimately ends up succeeding, but it also does give them a strict timetable because they're like, well, if we do this, even if we're lucky, they're going to find out eventually. So we have to go immediately. But that's a risk they're willing to take because of the hole that they dug themselves in previously with the Troidarians. So again, it all makes sense.
Yeah, I like the narrow window. It's a nice bit of micro tension within the story to kind of keep the pace going at that point for Pavan, because at that point, without that, he hasn't really got any reason to hurry through any of this. So it gives that is a solid choice there.
It's also nice how they get there, because I5 explains he's been thinking about it for a while, like playing it out as like a last ditch maneuver in case we're ever as down and out as we are here. So it's not just totally at random. That was nice.
Exactly.
Yeah,
very nice.
And also because Lauren's ideas were so bad that they were natural ideas to have, but they were never ever you're gonna find a card game in an hour and win $500,000. If you could do that, why even do this? Like
I love how he even calculates the odds of like that succeeding. Like
and even factors in the travel time as well. It's just a non-idea, and it's like, yeah, okay, sorry, moving on.
Yeah,
it's a very droid sort of descriptor, but then you mix it in with I5's like personality. It does come off as like if you're just with your buddy and you come up with like a get rich quick scheme, and then your other friend's like, dude, that's never gonna work, sort of thing. But you buy it. It's brilliant. Little banter like that really makes their dynamic all the more wonderful.
But yeah, that leads us into the part where kind of all paths converge with regards to the Jedi and Pavan and everything arriving with what happens with the Hutts.
Well, also they go to the apartment of Hothmanchar first.
Oh, we skipped over that. Let's talk about that. I forgot about that. Sorry about that. Yeah.
Maui Lin, the most amazing character in this book. So
okay, here's what I have to say.
That she is. She gets her POV.
Here's what I'll say about her. She does serve a couple of functions, so I get why she's here. Okay, she's an attempt at an active, proactive step from the Nymordians, right? Otherwise, they are just sitting around shitting bricks and they don't know what to do, right? This is they're trying to do something here. Okay. Number two, the fact that she blows up the apartment is the reason why Maul is not there to catch Lauren, B doesn't make sure he has the holocron. Like he has he
puts it in,
yeah. And so that might be it, really. I might be stretching, looking for like something else that she accomplishes.
She's firmly a plot device. But having said that,
she is that.
The strength of his ability to write character, he does give her a lot of character. It's only the fact that she cuts off here and then never goes anywhere ever again because she's dead.
If this was it's the medium, I think. Right? Yeah. If this was a movie, you could tolerate having it would be kind of comical, but it would be like somebody who's armed to the teeth, who immediately is just like a dead set of legs and a hole in the wall. Like, I mean, you know what I mean? That's kind of funny, I think, but it's not played for laughs, really. And she's not comical enough, like leading up to it for it to really play. Like she's not. She would
need to be a Greedo type. Yeah. She'd need to be a Greedo type for this to work in that way. But she's actually a competent, extremely competent bounty hunter with a past. Like it dips into the the perspective she's brought to the scene and the scenario, and even the fact that should you check out right now? No, I'm going to go in. I'm not going to sit by. Like it makes her up to be a character that will continue out into the story, and then no, she just dies in a cool way.
Yeah,
she's the first kind of mistake Maul makes, I suppose, in story terms.
Well, I mean, not so much by his own volition. Like I do. There's that we get a sequence like not long after that where he's like, but like, why did you fire rockets off in an enclosed space? Blew herself up along with everything else and most of the evidence. He's like,
everyone's response to Maul in this story is just explosion.
I was going to say that is something that is something.
I mean, it's kind of your best bet in most of these situations, anyway. So
yeah,
but it happens like in every altercation. Like she blows up the room. Bandara blows up the bike. Darsha at the end with the factory. You know what I mean? So I mean, it is a bit. It is a bit funny. You know
just a note where I mention that as well. I would have, if I'd been writing it, I would have had Maul lose a hand or something. I would have given Darsha like an earned
a hand
injury. Yes, just something so that when he goes into Phantom Menace, he's got we don't know it, but he's got a prosthetic, because that would just something weird to show she got him a bit rather than just blows up and he jumps out the window and it's fine. I felt like she earned a marker against him there.
Okay.
Personally,
yes.
I
guess if he had like a scar on his face or something in Phantom Menace, like they could use that
chipped horn or just something like that, you know.
Yeah. Again, that's kind of like the nature of like you have to work around, you know, his appearance in Phantom Menace without it feeling, you know, contrived. But yeah, she's just she serves her purpose and then she's gone.
She's gone.
And that's kind of
and she's gone.
They never send another bounty hunter for whatever reason. I mean, they could.
Well, they just drop off the story, as we talked about before, right? They're receiving the news that she's the mole is in the picture and that she's dead. Is kind of confirms that. Well, not Maul is in the picture. Rather, the Neimoidian is dead.
No, they don't learn. I was about to say they don't learn that Maul.
Just the Neimoidian friend is dead. That's where they kind of cut off, and we don't get anything much more than that, do we?
Is that true? Like, we don't see them ever again?
I don't think
the
so.
Last time we see,
I can't remember the scene if we do. It must be very small.
Well, because
like when Hako reports to Gunray that
he and the other one, Dauphine, they both show up and are like, "Here's the scoop," like, and it's bad. Like, like everything's bad, and we're not sure, but we think she's dead. Or no, we know she's dead. We're not so sure about him. We're waiting for a DNA test, but they found a singed piece of his cap or something like that, some garment of his that belongs to him and could only belong to him. Which is, what are you doing skulking around in your work clothes that only belong to like that? Don't do that. But so because that scene concludes on the thought that Newt Gunray has, sooner or later they'll have to tell the Sith Lord something.
Yeah,
and if
there's another one after that, then it would just be the ulcer rumination scene and the
as long as there's a follow-up from that, I can't remember what it is, but I'll forgive it, because if that is the last thing that you see from them, then that's a literal like dangling plot thread right there. Like, that doesn't work.
I think there is more after that, but it's the last thing they do. It's the last relevance to the main story.
Structurally, that's all I need to know, is that there's another scene, but I'll have to look back at what it was, because I generally can't remember what that is right
even
now.
Aside from relevance to the story, if we just had one last scene at the very end where we pivot to them setting up everything that's going on with the blockade, the fact that we know that in the Jedi temple that's been registered at the end of the story, if we just had something with them to round off their inclusion as like, okay, this is what they're doing now, this is them leading into Phantom Menace, etc., something to give them even if it's just Sidious kind of letting them go with it because he's got plans for them, letting it weigh.
It wouldn't be this. It wouldn't be this because Plagueis was written like 12 or 13 years later, but it would have been funny if like we're mutually agreeing not to talk about this, because the Sith have a lot of like it's quite embarrassing everything that Maul went through, and you'll need to know about all that. This kind of
under the rug,
kind of
so
a
to
thing.
speak.
We'll just pretend that this doesn't matter.
But basically, this blunder, like we said before, is what allows Pavan to get the holocron. First of all, him being able to recognize what it is from the get-go ties into his overarching plot with his history with the Jedi, history and all that. So that's all well and good. And he basically takes it to as we mentioned before, one of the few surviving members of Black Sun, organization still around, active on Coruscant, whose name I just forgot.
Yeah.
Dang it. Yeah,
it's Yanth.
Yeah,
the Hutt.
Yeah, the Hutt.
Not Garth.
And
not Garth.
Yeah, no, maybe that's what was messed me up. But yeah, we get that report. I like the fact. First of all, I will say it, for as little as Yanth is in it, I do like some of the descriptors for his character. Like, for one thing, he's young for a Hutt. He's a measly 400. But it is pretty young. But I like how they established, despite being so much younger than the other Hutts, his wit, his ingenuity has allowed him to climb the ranks of the organization much quicker than he would otherwise, which actually says a lot to his character when you consider how difficult it is to rise up through the ranks of both the Hutts and Black Sun simultaneously. So just from that alone, you realize that this guy is he means serious business. And I also like that when because he recognizes the holocron for what it is, Pavan tries to quote him a price, and he's like, done. And he just gives him the money straight up. He doesn't try to haggle.
Damn it! I should have said 3 million.
I know. He's like, it's worth like 4 times that. He
says 10. He says 10.
He said 10. Yeah.
10. Yeah, my mistake.
Yeah.
Again, interesting characterization. He's not willing to haggle at every turn. He underestimated the price, but the fact that he did just agree, like, he literally brings the money in. He's like, okay, now that I have this, you're dead. Like, no, he actually was going to pay them. In any other story, this would have gone off without a hitch. Again, it's interesting.
I'm sure he thinks Lauren is quite useful. Like, he probably likes doing deals with them. And we're even told Zippa did too until Lauren threatened his life. You kind of can't blame him for doing the double cross.
Exactly.
But I mean, he's Weasley and everything, but still, like, he was threatened first. And Lauren says that he's dealt with him before and it never went awry before. But I also love that, like, Yanth tries to like book it, like he tries running, like
the physicality involved. Yeah, exactly, because Hutts can move fast.
He tries to fight Maul first, like he throws that thing at him.
In the act of running, he's running.
That was really cool. It's a good character. Again, the strength of the voice, the strength of competent writer to be able to infuse a lot of character into even just a one note character that doesn't come up again. He's really good at that. I joked about the holocron before, but I also like you haven't mentioned that he could just flick it through and get it working. Like it shows you, it's a instant on-page explanation to okay, this guy is high in the ranks and has experience. You know, it's, very simple.
Like he probably would have gone on to be a major, crime lord if he had, survived.
Yeah. I need to do some nitpicky stuff just before we go further here. So number one, when they enter this room, or like when Maul enters this room, even as a kid, I had a problem with this because like I don't know exactly how tall everybody is, right? I'm not that nerdy, right? But Ray Park is like, to me, looks like a fairly like average size to even kind of short guy, and maybe it's because he's fighting Liam Neeson, who's quite tall, but like he's short, like he's not a giant person, and this describes him as being 2 feet tall when he walks in. I'm just like, no, or not 2 feet tall, 2 meters tall. Sorry, I'm like, he's not. Yeah, he's not 2 meters tall. So that 2 feet would have been Yoda, right? Sorry, but he's not 2 meters tall. So that's number one. Also, this is really I'm nitpicking here.
He's 5'7", by the way, just check.
5'7". See, well short of 2 meters tall. Yeah.
Really, it says here that I just googled it too, and it says Ray Park is 5'9".
Oh wow.
Well, whatever. The point is, he ain't no 2 meters tall. And also the fact I don't know. It feels like he's quite like it's a big room. I'm imagining like a big room, like it's a Hutt's chamber, right? And there's room for a Hutt to kind of like try to run away. And this is a big place, right? When he first walks in, Lauren can see this guy. He says he's 2 meters tall. He either doesn't know what 2 meters means or he's just wrong. But also he takes the time. It says he's got 10 horns on his head like a crown, which is like a nice, like if he was right up in your face, you could see that. But like this is nitpicky stuff. I'm sorry, but it just like it's the camera head. It's like I understand. He's describing the character. But Lauren can't see that, and he should be so frightened and just concerned about what's happening here that he's not taking the time to count his horns. That's always bothered me. Like if I said if you saw Bart Simpson just off, like, do you know how many spikes make up his hair? You'd have to count them. It's 9, by the way. But like that's just kind of known. I took a cartoon drawing class, and they told me you do one here and one in the middle, one there, and then you fill in the rest. And it's 9. So it's like I know that, but you don't automatically just know that. It would be like flashing a card. And then I hide it from you. How many spikes is on Bart's hair? Like you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it's just that kind of a thing.
And also the fact that in another writer's hands, like the prose would be to the point where focusing on that kind of thing could work more. Like having it be kind of more a flourish, like the crown of horns. You know, you could make that work and be quite powerful as.
It's a great description, but yeah, just not in that moment.
Yeah, exactly. Wrong moment, wrong character in that wrong situation in a voice focused.
I have to also talk about when this happened. Was this before or after Sidious called him? This was after, because he had to go back to the apartment where he found the fact that the holocron
realized about the holocron.
There are 2 words used by the author that get on my nerves. One of them is in that scene. Darth Maul, like Sidious calls and he's like, "What's up, yo? Like what happened? Like like how are you doing?" And it starts off with exactly. Starts off like the with the good news, and he's like, "The tergiversator, Hathmanchar is dead." Like tergiversator? You talk about like a thesaurus word. I had to look that shit up. I've never in my life seen that used, deployed by any other author anywhere. Never. Likewise. In my life. So cut that one. Much earlier on in the story, this is less pretentious, but to me it's distracting. At the very beginning, after the end of the first phone call, where Sidious is like, "I know these fools are lying. I have to get my apprentice involved." He's like hyping up the idea of like the person he's about to call, and he's like referring to like Darth Maul as his champion, his apprentice, his warrior, his this or that, his perfect, whatever. He calls him his Myrmidon, like from the Odyssey, like Achilles or whatever. Like, isn't he in charge of like the Myrmidons? Isn't that like Achilles' people?
I think so. Yeah. Like
Greek mythology or whatever. I can maybe Iliad, Odyssey. I don't know. I don't remember where it's from. Don't quote me. But in my head, Myrmidon means that and like only that. I don't know. Like to me, why is he calling him that? Like what in Star Wars? Why would you use that term? And maybe there's something else that I can. I mean, I guess if you can get away with having like a katana fleet, which I think is cool, but like, I don't know, it just
that one
feels
didn't bother
so
me personally.
Off to me.
But you're right that it would need it's a little explanation in world.
It's one step removed. If you refer to something as like a cyclops, like some one-eyed creature, we don't really have another word for that, even though it is a Greek mythology thing, right? But to me, this is it's on the edge of a proper name. It would be like if Han was going around stealing a ship called like the Flying Zeus or something. I can't. It just doesn't work for me. Like I don't like it. It's too specific. It's too specific. Or like if Yoda had once had an adventure where he, stopped a criminal from stealing a jewel called like the Osiris or something like that. It doesn't make sense to me. So I would take that away. But so those are the two things that bother me. Those are my nitpicks out of the way, everybody. That and Maui Lin. We can get back to what we were talking about.
For me, it was debit card. There was reference to a debit card in this
debit
before,
card,
which is perfectly fine as a concept.
Fine.
Completely fine, but don't think it's ever come up in Star Wars before. So I was like, oh,
well, the idea of anybody like on Coruscant using cash also is crazy.
Yeah, it's hilarious.
I mean, just like why is that a thing? Yeah.
Well, yeah, a lot of like stories like set in like sci-fi like things are weird about that. But hey, I guess every story needs its orbiculate flora words. It's like
orbiculate flora.
Yeah, exactly.
We gotta get all tonsorial here. Yeah.
What I will say though is I agree with you, Matt, like about the description about the horns when he enters. But what I will say I do like, and this is something the book does a few times when they're selling the horror of Maul, they draw also special attention to his eyes and like how his eyes are like so otherworldly, even compared to the rest of him, like windows into the dark side sort of thing. The sheer terror of that, and also the fact like when they have those descriptors for his eyes, it's not like he's making a deliberate sort of face. They just describe his eyes naturally as just being so like just wrong because the dark side is just so infused with him, and it makes him so terrifying. It really does come off as something otherworldly, like I just said a second ago, and that adds to the terror so much because like when he walks in, you do very much feel like, oh, like why did the temperature in the room just drop like 30 degrees? Oh shit, death is at your door, quite literally. So that initial setup, I think, again, aside from the horns thing, I agree with you. It's a little silly, but the rest of it, I do think the terror is very well established here.
It's like
and Maul just basically goes on a rampage. Essentially, he kills almost everybody.
It's like we said early on. It's like we said early on with the fact that it's impressive how much of the kind of the Jaws effect is maintained with Maul. Not quite a Jaws effect, but in that kind of
it's more like a Terminator.
Yeah, Terminator is the better descriptor. Yeah, for sure. It's how much of that is maintained, Alien. Given how many times the prey slips away for various different reasons. It's hard to keep that up, and they do put a lot of work into making sure that he maintains that menace.
Like, this is my favorite one because like he loses patience and he starts like throwing people out of the way in the crowd just with the force.
Yeah.
Just like and it's never really dealt with again. Yeah, the battering ram. Like
I would have loved to see consequences from that as well. That would have been something to come up later.
I think that again, nothing really comes of it here too much, but I think it comes up in the Plagueis book. I think they comment on that fact that like he's been spotted, like like just. What's he doing? Kind of a thing. I think it's one of the things they're kind of freaking out about, like at points there, but they're able to like kind of smooth it over because there's no one reliable, like to tell the story.
Weird, weird thing to bring up too, but it's actually pretty rare that we ever see a Hutt crime boss get killed like on screen, but like directly in a story, like rather than it being like implied. Again, it's a rare thing, so I think it's worth pointing out. I mean, again,
obviously, I don't know how often.
I was about to say, aside from Jabba the Hutt in Return of the Jedi, obviously that's the most direct version, but it is still kind of rare for that to happen because they're usually so disconnected from the main plot in the sense of being.
Well, they're hard to kill, right?
Yeah,
hard to kill, missing and half of a head.
Yeah, and also in stories, so much of their power relies on the mystique and their the fact that you just don't touch a Hutt because if you do, it's going to screw you over. That aspect usually keeps them at arm's length from most stories.
And Plagueis even calls attention to it in that sequence that Matt was talking about when he's talking to Sidious about what Maul's doing. It's like he's killed, several people, including a Hutt. Like he says specifically, including a Hutt. Like it's like that's a particularly big deal. Like you were saying, Callan, you don't touch Hutts unless you want to get killed yourself. But the fact that he just does it casually. I mean, granted, and he runs away, but he kind of tries to fight at one point too. He takes up the staff and just doesn't do anything. So he tries to book it, and Maul's like, "Nah, you're dead," and he just kills him.
Maul's days were certainly numbered, even if he hadn't died pretty much next week from this.
I mean, at this point, he's about as low profile as like a peacock or something. I mean, it's just like he's doing what now? Like, okay. But so anyway, this is where like the Jedi get involved because they're everyone's running away, and the Jedi. I love how they just show up and like put the ass end of the speeder in Maul's face to like blow his ass away. That's and he's like so pissed off he can't even think. He's like, well, who's in my way now? And then he's all excited because it's the Jedi.
Yeah, I found it funny because initially it reads like it's a force push
because they initially. Yeah.
So sorry. Yeah. Once again, the fact that it originally reads as a force push as well, and you think, oh, maybe it was a force because the Jedi are involved, but then no, he literally does just drop the ass end of the speeder and uses that.
Yeah.
It's fine. Get in. We've got a few moments. Like, I don't think we do.
I was about to say because like they think that knocked him out, and for a normal person, it definitely would have, or even killed him. But all it did was like it slightly inconvenienced him and just made him more pissed. And they're like, how did he do that? And again, like saying a lot with a little.
Which is why, Pavan, you shouldn't have set the bloody blaster to stun in the last few pages.
We'll get to that. But also, like, speaking of Pavan, when he sees the Jedi, he's like, okay, I hate the Jedi, but, I have two options here, and that's definitely the lesser of two evils.
That's a really... I like that moment, too, because I like how it's explained from Darsh's perspective and how... this is really well... Because it could just be so, like, lazy, like, in another author's hands, like, getting this across. But she talks about how, okay, there's something weird on this guy's face because of us, i.e. me and my master, the Jedi. Don't know about that, but whatever it is, he's put it aside because he's wisely decided that we're the lesser of two evils. Like it's all done like in her thought process almost that quickly. And it's a great way of it being like, she doesn't have to find out for herself in some elongated, protracted way he don't like Jedi. She can just tell, and it doesn't really matter right now and also I love her thought process of, it can only be, but it can't be. Like, what's chasing them? Because they haven't seen the Phantom Menace. To them, the Sith are 1,000 years ago. You know what I mean? So it's like, it's a really... I love how she doesn't even want to say the word. She doesn't even say, it can only be a Sith Lord that dreaded... It's like, well, it's got to... There's only one explanation, but it can't be. It can't be the kind of... It's really... It makes the Sith feel scarier than when they announce themselves in that way, or like just that comic booky, cartoony way. And, Star Wars is kind of cartoony, I get that. But I mean, it's what you don't want it to feel that way in moment to moment. You want a heightened... You want a heightened version of that.
Particularly a story that's all about shaping the fear and dread of this particular type of character as well.
And what sells it is like mid, chase, at some point her master says, why is the Sith after you? And that makes it real. Yeah. It's like her master says it. It's like in that everything I was telling myself that it can't be, but I know it is, he's just made it a little bit more real by just calling it that. And he doesn't say, my Padawan, the Sith appear to be, how is that possible? He's like trying to get out of here, and he's just like, why are the Sith after you? And like you can tell like he's had all the same thoughts, but his mind is, he's a Jedi, he's a master. It's like
he gets basically no page time, and it is cool in almost every moment of it.
He's a badass, he's really cool.
Yeah, Bandara is awesome. Also, it's worth noting too that like they do establish from previous POV of Maul, like when he sees he has actually encountered Jedi before. Like this isn't the first time he's ever crossed blades with any Jedi, but it's very few and far between. I do like that they established that, because it would have just kind of dragged it down if we had like a whole section where Maul's thinking to himself, oh, finally I meet a Jedi for the first time. I trained my whole life, this, that. And it's like, no, like this isn't his first time, but it is still a rarity enough for him to it excites him in his own Sith way, of course.
He doesn't have a great track record with Padawans, though, does he? As proven by this book and the Phantom Menace.
Well,
Well, I mean, he does beat her. You know what I mean? Like she wasn't winning. But,
I also love what.
She was never going to win that. It is.
And technically speaking, like Kenobi should have lost. Like, if another Jedi wasn't there to die and lose their lightsaber that way. I mean, the whole way that Maul died in the movie was always lame, which is half the reason why everybody was like, man, that sucked. People really wanted to see more of him, but if not, I think they would have preferred just he not die that way. Yeah, and then of course he's been so incredibly overused since his
somehow more overused than Vader, which is impressive.
So overused. But anyway,
but yeah, continuing with the chase sequence. That was a cool little part. Again, the points you raised, Matt, were the bit that I love the most. The snapshot kind of elevation of the Sith as a concept, the kind of the computation of the Jedi as they're going, oh, okay, what's this? Oh, I understand now. The processing of all of that and establishing the level of threat based on what they know within the temple, realizing it and crystallizing it for the apprentice and also the droid and Pavan. Just them being like, oh, whoa, we're chased by a Sith. That's confirmed now. Yeah. Jesus, it helps set the stage for the chase as a whole. Moving past this point, and it's already been pretty long already. Like this wasn't the start of the chase, but this is the kind of the point where all the characters are assembled, the board's been laid, the stakes have been elevated.
It's like the second act climax.
Yeah, you've got the ticking clock of we've got to get this information to the Jedi Temple, even though they won't, and that's the set stage to make sure that's as fun and engaging all the way through as possible before you even talk about the character dynamics, which are all absolutely fantastic as well, tied together. So yeah,
well,
and we get the Anun Bandara fight as well with Maul.
Also, when Pavan tells the Jedi who he is, they establish that Bandara, like, he recognizes the name, but he doesn't say why. And Darsha is like, okay, my master clearly knows who that is. What's going on? And I like it. That's a good way of feeding into the overarching like mystery of his past that like we've established before we eventually sort of like comes full circle. I do like the fact that they don't let that bog down. Like he doesn't go into this diatribe and like Bandara's not like, well, Pavan, wait, are you the same Pavan who, all that? Like they literally don't have time for that. So I appreciate that they didn't do that. But it's a nice way of it's a really good setup too. And it would make sense that he would know who that was, because obviously his age, his experience, his standing within the temple overall. Because they do establish that he's a fairly renowned. He's not a council master, obviously, but he is a fairly renowned combat instructor. When it comes to things like lightsaber combat and physical martial arts and all that. Yeah, he more or less in his own way. So he's someone with a reputation and some pull. So, and you add on his experience, it would make sense that he would be one of the people who would instantly recognize that name.
Yeah, that does a good job of setting up everything with the fight with Maul, and we get the first kind of loss of I say loss, first character loss. And that's not even true because we forgot about the fact that it took a while for Darsha to register the fact that her charge had died underneath her. But yeah,
and Maui Lin. Let's not forget about Maui.
Yeah, of course, I'm Maui Lin. But that was the one I was thinking of. It didn't affect really any of the characters.
Of course.
But yeah, no, this is the first major loss within the cast. It's kind of, you see it coming, obviously, because it's a trope of the style, particularly in Star Wars. But I liked that the focus that was put on Darsha kind of tamping it down and putting it aside for a later time. It was a nice, struck a nice balance for me for her acknowledging her grief. We talked about how she was kind of ticking off the process of the Jedi Code. This was kind of the start of that in terms of her actions. I like that she's processing it and dealing with it, but also understandably putting it aside a bit and showing her meat as a Jedi.
I like how quickly and swiftly the moment spirals to the point where Bandara just is like, okay, take the controls. I got to go fight the Sith now. I'm probably not going to make it. But it almost feels like a stock scene at this point. Just Jedi sacrifice itself. But at the time, it felt a little bit more novel. And it was just cool because even though I had already seen the Phantom Menace, I didn't know that he had fought Jedi before or which ones or whatever. So it was just like, how's this going to go and why? And I love that Maul's solution at the end is I got to jump off a building from Coruscant, and somehow survive that. It's earned. You know what I mean? And it's cool that he does survive that and it explains in painstaking detail just how difficult that was, even for someone like him. The only weakness of it is it falls into the trap of every confrontation ends in a boom. That Maul has to run away from.
And it's funny because in World that makes perfect sense, but narratively, can we try something else?
Three times,
especially with a carbon freezer right next to it as well. You could have included that a little bit. But
having said that, the real strength of it though is that I love how this, and you kind of already teed it up, how it changes Darsha. I like how without being, quite frankly, she'd be fully within her rights to be snippy about it if she wanted to be, or like more angry about it if she wanted to be. I wouldn't mind if she was, but I like how even without that, she's just like not going to brook any more bullshit about Bandara. She points out like he gave his life for you.
Very
firmly, I won't tolerate it anymore.
And it's beautiful. I love
and
that
they honor that, so it's like
as annoyed as Pavan is about the rebuke, he immediately understands the gravity and gives credit where it's due.
Jedi can't own things, but they have their deeds. You know what I mean? It's this is undeniable kind of a thing. Yeah.
And also, on his character, he's a decent character. He knows even through his anger and hatred of the Jedi, and justifiably, and from his perspective, that that was a low blow. Yeah, I'm better than that. I like it. It never shows that, but you can see the registering, and you can see that from the nature of the character that's what he's taking from this, and it sets up that first connective point between the two characters of him and Darsha. I really like.
By the way, on that point, I I wasn't offended at the hints of like romance there, but it wasn't needed. I think
Mm.
that it would have been perfectly fine if it had just been mutual respect. I like that they point out that there wasn't time for it to develop because there simply wasn't. This was like a 2-day like adventure
and
during
only a
which
few
they
hours
spent most
post
times
them
apart. Yeah,
recognizing the emotions.
exactly.
They
In
also bring up
particular,
the age difference too.
Yeah.
And how that's
But as if to say it doesn't really matter, which is fine. I mean, I don't necessarily think that it doesn't. I think that kind of thing is always like case by case basis. It's what people want, what they're comfortable with, how mature they are. They can make their own decisions, kind of a thing. I don't have a blanket "this is wrong" kind of meter for it, but it felt like. I felt almost like the author might have abandoned maybe something that happened in like an earlier version of the story or something.
I agree.
It doesn't really have anything to do with anything.
Yeah, it felt untouched upon in how late it came.
Supposed to be put into that.
Yeah. But at the same time, we talked about real life things with explosions. That it does fit because when you go through this kind of situation and to attract people who find you physically attractive in this kind of environment, it's guaranteed with the bonding nature.
If the story had been structured a little differently, there's nothing wrong with it. It was far from an offensive idea.
Exactly. But I completely agree. That clunky is the word exactly because if technically makes sense, but in terms of story terms, why would you focus even a little bit on that? You know, it feels disjointed from the rest of the gear works. But good.
It was almost like because they had done the work of explaining that Lauren, even though he never makes use of this really, he works out in gravity gym and he's very handsome and he's muscular and all that. He has time for all that, even though he's like a maudlin drunk who like fails at business. Like, you know what I mean?
Right. One more thing about the Jedi, man.
It's a little bit of that Indiana Jones, Han Solo. This isn't like a real character kind of a thing. This is Is he a loser or is he a catch? It seems like he's a catch. It's like, I don't know. Like, but anyway.
And also that's the other part of it. The fact that he does hate the Jedi and then he's recognizing that even during his kind of quasi-attraction to Darth. So like it feels like you said that there's more that was supposed to have come from this. And even if it was just the idea of it never having to manifest because of the tragedy of both their lives being cut short when they were. But it felt clunky. Yeah.
Well, even to your point on that, like the self, like, deprecation that he sort of like feels like, well, she deserves, she wouldn't want to be stuck with me anyway. He has those thought processes like later on after her unfortunate passing, and again, it kind of speaks to the characterization of that as well. But before we move on to that, does anyone have anything to say about like the actual fight itself? What I will say is there are two things that did really stick out to me. I like the fact that him jumping from the speeder onto like Maul's bike, like it was so unexpected that
Maul was like, wait, what?
Such an experienced fighter was kind of thrown off by like that. Like, wait,
it almost feels like it almost feels like Maul got the idea to do that to Qui-Gon and Tatooine, because that's kind of how he tries to. He jumps off the speeder bike immediately, and then there's the cutscene where he followed him onto the ramp, and the idea is Qui-Gon cut that off, and that's why you see Maul awkwardly looking like he's coming up from a landing, like in the movie, because they cut that bit out. But I
like that point, and I also like how they established, like, because like the fight itself isn't very long, but what is interesting is I like how they established that like both their fighting styles are actually kind of similar. Like Bandara, he uses Teras Kaze, and it's not confirmed obviously in the book itself, but I think a guide somewhere also confirms that he uses Juyo. I don't quote me on that exactly, but I do like how he's kind of like a light side Darth Maul in how he fights, but he's still not at the same skill level, and Maul's able to deduce that like really quickly. So it kind of shows the martial experience there, and how Maul is able to instantly deduce that, like, okay, he's challenging me. He clearly knows some of the Teras Kaze forms, but I know them better, and he knows that too. The ebb and flow is really interesting, and I like that.
Attack of the Clones is 2002.
Yeah,
came out 2002. Yeah, so this book missed out on 1 year before they like rolled out the names of the forms and everything. So whatever he's ascribed with is kind of like in like some guidebook or whatever that came out after the fact. I'm sure that those terms would have been stuffed all throughout here if had access to them.
They were switched out for like what he used instead of being full forms. They used them for like maneuvers as well, which kind of framed them as anyway. So that was
Teras Kaze maneuvers, which were established well before. Too, so that's a big part of it as well.
That's probably the most disjointed part of it, because he describes them as used for blade work when that's more of a physical form, like hand to hand, isn't it? So that's probably the most disjointed. But even with that minor glitch, the rest of it was very nicely incorporated in my opinion.
And I liked sort of the symmetry in their fighting style. Like they both use similar things, but Maul's he's just better. and he's more powerful, and that's ultimately what it leads to. But at the same time, it is one of the few instances we mentioned how he gives respect to Darsha later on. He gives Anun Bandara also respect too after the fact. Like, yeah, he was, I beat him, but he was a worthy opponent. So his character there.
I don't know if this is contradicted in like the novelization of the Phantom Menace. I don't know. I haven't read that in so long, but I mean, probably since it was brand new. I haven't read that since I was a kid. But so I don't know if it's like if Maul thinks about what it's like fighting Qui-Gon or not. Is Maul like a POV in that? Do you remember, Evan? Or is it purely the Jedi? It doesn't really matter. It's just kind of off the top of my head.
I don't remember.
Yeah. Okay, so like I don't know if there's like something that contradicts this, but to me, the way it's described, I kind of just got the same flavor as like what goes on between him and Qui-Gon. He's better than Qui-Gon, but like he can't just whip Qui-Gon. He has to try,
Exactly, yeah, and it fits the energy of the scene as well. It's very high energy, high momentum. The idea of they've just leapt off a speeder bike, they're kind of rolling onto the platform, and they're just immediately in the fight. It feels scrambly and desperate, and
it points out,
high octane.
When they're on the roof together, like it points out the fact that he knows he's better, but he still can't break his guard. He knows eventually he will, but he can't just up and do it. So it's like it's a question of wearing him down and just finding like the right moment.
It's also the first like real like one-on-one challenge we see Maul face in this entire book. Because before that he's either been interrupted or he's just breezed through mercenaries and droids left and right without too much resistance. Again, certain accidents notwithstanding, of course. So it is a big deal, and it's a good way. I like how this very much is the climax of like Act 2. It's a good bridge into what ultimately leads into the final bit, which we'll get to shortly. So
which is a long final bit as well, because it's basically half the book is the third act, right? In terms of pacing, it's a good way of leading into that. It's a good bridge.
Maybe not
felt
quite
that out to me then.
It's long. It's a longer act than 1 and 2, but it's. I wouldn't say it's half the book in terms. I mean, I have to go look at the page length, but I don't think
it's difficult when
you're
listening to it and not reading it physically. It felt like half to me though from what was happening. In a good way. Again, not critiquing the pacing at all there, but I think it was a good job of establishing Maul as the threat he was. Right, it did a lot of service to him, because even though this is a extremely challenging opponent, is one of the best in the order, and he did he could beat him relatively handily, he struggled nonetheless, and it made it more of an earned feat to kind of set up the threat he represented later on. And the fact, just the idea that the reader knows, okay, the group can't fight him. Like there's no pulling it out of the pocket that Darsha could do to survive this. This is a threat that will kill them if it catches up. Really good decision to kind of lay that groundwork and establish that early on, so that we can have that tension of looming threat.
I will say this: I definitely got flashbacks to Jedi Council Acts of War when Micah Giat sacrifices himself by exploding the tanker behind him with his pocketed lightsaber, when he's like Troy, Jedi, we're not afraid to die from a worthy cause. It's a very similar scene, and because Bandara, like they established that Bandara, like even as he's about to plunge his saber into the thing for the explosion, he's not like, there's no dread. He's just like accepting it. And Maul's realization of the fact that he's actually gonna do this. And then boom, like that's. Again, it's very Jedi. A little on the nose.
It's a patented technique. When you can't win, blow everybody up. taught in the temple, clearly.
Maybe Anun and Micah Giat were, maybe they knew each other. Who knows?
I'm sure they knew each other. But well, I think they did know each other, because what's her name? Callan's favorite Jedi, Swan. She trained under both of them. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that is established.
They definitely knew each other. Yeah. So anyway, I don't have much to say about like the whole sewer stuff. I think it's all well written, but to me, it's always, this is the bit of the book that I never skipped it as like a kid.
It's grungy. There's a lot of horror elements to it. They really do rant.
It works really well.
It takes a lot of time as well. Well done. Again, I may be wrong about the half the book thing, but it certainly felt that way to me from how. Yeah,
I think it doesn't take that much time at all. It just feels that way because of the slog through the sewer. And there's not a lot. It's kind of the same giant scene. Like they're moving from point A to point B.
They flee,
like that's it. You know what I mean?
They flee, they encounter something. It's only the character work that he dots in between that makes it satisfying, really, and very much.
Well, this is sort of getting into the.
It initially feels that way, is we did just have like this high octane lightsaber dual action sequence, and then
I'm not even complaining about it. Yeah, you're totally right about it. That's the reason why it happens. It's a lull after that. It's just I just don't have much to say about it myself. Like the Cathons or whatever they're called, it's a nice description of what they are and everything, and it's another. Yeah, like this is like again like my 24 day. This is like bear trap or nuclear bomb shelter nut guy or we're out of the frying pan into the fire. One problem after another. We've escaped the Sith, and now there's blind cannibals are here. Okay,
Much,
it's like
the big like the big worm thing. What's it called again?
The Towson. Yeah, like that one is.
To be fair, one of the bits of prose that kind of I don't know if you'd consider this classic prose that kind of stood out to me when Maul like hears about the Towson. He's like, they're supposed to be extinct, but then again, so are the like again, little like that too.
Yeah.
But I almost like how he's not scared. He's more intrigued than anything else.
He's he's like a Vulcan. He's like a Vulcan from Star Trek. Like everywhere he goes, just with dark side emotions, when things get mad or get bad, he gets mad. But like normally, he's just going around like, "This is mildly interesting. This is mildly interesting. This is mildly interesting." But like, and it's really funny
in this book in particular because he's surprised so much in this book. Like he never seems to, even though he registered the lesson, I won't make that mistake again. He keeps making the same like, "Oh wow, okay, this was a surprise." Because again, bad day for all involved. Everything that can go wrong goes wrong for everybody. Including the Towson, if you think about it. It's like, what these bastards coming into my lair?
Yeah, the Towson's whole thing is like, it's like, again, we talked about this a bit in the, Heir to the Empire review, but like the Ysilamari, like the Towson is a species that naturally evolved the ability to block the Force. Although for them, the Towson, it's different from the Ysilamari because they don't so much create an orb that cancels everything out. It's more so like they can't be perceived at all, and the ability, like they can still use powers against it, but it doesn't work nearly as effectively. I actually like that because I don't want them to just copy. It wouldn't really make much sense for them to just copy paste the exact same abilities as the Ysalamiri onto the Towson. Also, the fact that the Ysalamiri's abilities are for all intents and purposes.
To say the more you say it, doesn't it?
Yeah, the fact that those things, their abilities are for all intents and purposes superior to the Towson's, because the Towson can be affected, but just less so. Whereas with them, it's pretty much nothing. I know this was like retroactively, but it kind of almost justifies like why Thrawn specifically chose them as his means of getting around Jaruus Sabaoth's abilities, because sure, like, the amount of creatures in the galaxy that can do this sort of thing is extremely limited, but like if you're going to go for any of them, you go for the Ysalamiri. The Towson's a good backup plan, but it's not quite as effective. Again, little things like that. I know it's retroactive, but I do appreciate
it's
that.
It's good within the story. This book, it's a good story choice as well, because if you're going to give this creature as much of a physicality to it, as much of a threat as just as a force of nature, then you also don't want to make it like a force bubble defense. You want it to have it be.
That's what I mean. Like it's not a copy paste.
Yeah, it's a good choice. I like balancing it.
I like the fact that when like fairly early on in the story, like whenever I would reread it, like there's a bit early on. It might have been like around the time we were going after Yanth or something like that, where Maul was like, "This chore's gone on far too long," and it's like, "Oh, you're not even halfway through it. You don't even know." Like this,
he does mention that a lot. To be fair,
yeah. Like this one is like, I have the most sympathy for him because he's stuck fighting like this force immune giant like worm monster, like dune monster creature thing, and he's like, he's fighting that thing, and then like over the corner of his eye, he's like, they just escaped again.
Yeah.
And the bridge is fucked.
You can just imagine him hanging from the ledge before he pulls himself, just going like, ugh.
Well, it says like a howl of rage or whatever follows him, which meant a lot more back when Maul had this characterization before he turned into a shrieking, shrill, annoying, just ridiculous asshole.
Exactly.
Like, which is, in my opinion, of what he's been since he's been resurrected. If you like him, that's cool. I hate him. And I've made no secret of that, so it shouldn't be news to anyone following us. But like, I mean, it's just like, that bit has always stuck with me. Just the image of Maul, or like the idea of Maul shouting in rage, used to mean something really powerful. Just like, I have to go all the way back around and then try to find them somehow.
Yeah,
just like
the physical doubling back. Exactly.
I mean, to be fair, the dude, like the dude literally got cut in half, and all he did was like, he doesn't, so he's very good at like keeping his composure.
Not only that, but that happened while he had the high ground as well, so that's got to sting.
Yeah. Oh gosh. But well, actually, to be fair, when it comes to things like that with Maul's characterization, it really does read like you just take the Ray Park Maul from Phantom Menace and just insert it. You're silent, efficient, angry, but it's like,
cool,
just this ruthless,
everything that the resurrected version is not.
It's seething. It's not raging. I mean, with obvious exceptions in little brief spurts here. It's much more powerful.
Which is also ironic if you listen to the current audiobook, because he's voiced by the guy who voices him in the Clone Wars. It's like, it's a little weird juxtaposition, but again, that's hindsight's 2020 with that one.
You guys really don't think like the moments of glee when he's like talking like that about like fighting? You don't think that's crazy over the top and cringe? Like, I mean, that's so bad.
It is over the top.
It's over the top. I agree.
It's not my stylistic preference, but for whatever reason, this particular display of it never triggered me.
Out of your mind, sir.
This is also the sequence, sort of the general sort of sequences in the book where we finally learn about Pavan's full backstory, why he hates the Jedi and all that. Essentially what it comes down to is he worked for the Jedi Temple financier. First of all, is this the book that established that the Temple also, like, obviously logically it would make sense that they would employ like non-forceful people to like work for them and stuff, but like, is this the book where that was definitively established? I'm genuinely asking.
I've encountered it. It took me by surprise.
I don't know. Yeah.
So yeah, it must have been.
I mean, again, it always makes sense, security, financial management, sanitation, all that stuff. I mean, relatively.
Can I switch to the end of this story for a second? Like his backstory.
Sure.
Is there a detail I'm missing where like a severance package and like a connection was offered and declined? Because this is no way to do business.
No.
Like, is it as serious as, okay, we took your kid, you're fired, to let the door hit you? Because that sucks. It should, like,
the
there has to be like a
would
policy
presumably be that there was a severance package, and
I think they do establish a severance, but that's just about it. So basically, he had a son, Jax Pavan, who ends up obviously becoming the protagonist of Coruscant Nights trilogy, also written by, this author, continuity with that. Basically, yeah, he's force sensitive. They took him to be trained as a Jedi. They forbid him from having an emotional attachment to him because they didn't want there to be any issues with that. They gave him a severance package, and yeah, basically he left. And, Lauren Pavan is understandably upset about that. And it's also established during this time that like he fell into such like a depressive state. His wife also ended up leaving him, Jax's mom, who does she even get named? No, she does.
I think it references that she leaves him before they lose their son. I think that's the order of things later in the book.
I don't think so.
I may be mistaken about that. I may be mistaken about that, but I'm pretty sure it says it.
I always got the impression that they took him and then she left.
I think it all stems from like the child being given up to the order, and then his behavior changes to the point
that
where
would
things
make
become irreconcilable between the two.
I may be mistaken about that. I'm pretty sure there's a single paragraph that flips that order. That works.
I haven't read the Coruscant Nights books in a long time.
Yeah, me neither. I barely remember.
Does his mom ever come back up again in those?
I'd have to reread them. I really have
maybe we'll cover those.
Sparse memories.
Maybe we can cover those one of these. I do remember liking those books. I just don't remember much about them.
But my point being, it ought to be that like you get a golden parachute if you're ejected from the Jedi Temple 100%. In this way. Like they're going to set you up with a different gig somewhere at the very least, because it seems like they said, "Thanks for the kid, bye." Like, which I'm not sure that he would have. It seems like he was going to be sore about the fact he couldn't have a relationship with his son anyway, like regardless of what happened. But it really does feel like nothing was done to like provide for this guy, like in the act of like he's going to lose his job and just be disgraced, completely. It's not cool.
It's a little awkward. I mean, I guess you can also somewhat interpret it as like, okay, we're only seeing that from his perspective. Maybe more was actually like maybe like
that's why I asked if he gave like a if he said, well, they offered me such and such, and I said fuck off. Like because I don't
think it's alluded to in the book, but
they don't establish that. Like you could sort of interpret it as that, given his just general sort of.
Yeah, but I'm not willing to do that. I don't want to be biased either way. Like because I don't want to be biased against him.
But that's what I'm saying. Like, if that was the case that of like what you were saying, Matt, then yeah, it's completely negligent on the Jedi's part to do that.
Completely.
From my point of view, the Jedi are evil.
Sometimes, yeah.
Don't make that line. Don't make that line make sense.
Well, then you are lost.
Don't make that terrible dialogue make sense. Don't make us justify that, please.
I'm gonna say that about every line in the prequels, then, because like we can play this game all day. I mean, only a Sith deals in absolutes. Says a Jedi. Boy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh gosh, that's certainly something.
But yeah, that definitely needs to be a reference in the book at some point. But yeah, past the Talcin, we just get the climax, right? Or the pre-climax, I suppose.
Pretty much. Huh? But Darsha is also sympathetic to him and his backstory. She also she remembers the fact the time when
because of I5. Yeah, we argued about. We're going to have a little debate about this. You wanted this to be different. I like it as is because it's so understated and different, like from what like normally would be like some big blow up moment, which is kind of what you were suggesting at Kellen. I like the fact that it's instead I5. I like that it's like a big mutual bonding thing. They have mutual respect for her. Feelings are changing. I5 story comes out how he was like abused by the family that owned him by like these horrific rich kids or whatever who used him as like just something to throw stones at and make him jump off high surfaces for their amusement. Horrible
horrendous,
stuff.
by the way.
Which is like a really heartfelt moment, and how like that like Lauren's relationship with him starts because of that, just out of compassion for like the droid. And he like he sees himself in it, like they're both down and out and like out of luck and everything like that, but he just views him as a person, which is fun and nice and just endearing.
That's why he like disabled the circuits that were keeping him docile when he got
and that's when Darsha starts changing her thoughts about Lauren, because well, if he feels that way about the droid, he's a good guy. But then it comes out like, oh, how long have you been at the temple, Padawan Asant? And it's also a nice detail that he knows she's a Padawan. He's like a sharp droid,
that. That was a good beat.
And she's like, all my life. And he's like, okay, well, think about what happened 5 years ago. I've been in business with him for 5 years. And then she's like, oh yeah, okay, gotcha.
So do the math.
I like all that stuff.
Yeah, I definitely liked it. I was not critiquing it as a flaw by itself. To me.
But you said you would have liked more.
Yeah, I would have liked to amp that moment up because it gets mentioned. They go, oh, okay, and then they move on. Like I would have liked that to have been more of a dynamic moment between the two, at least the two. But
do you think it might be a structural thing because the book's about to end, like, and we don't have much time to do with anything worthwhile with that?
I mean,
or do you think it's a weakness of the scene itself? Because I don't
think it's a weakness. I think you could have made more of it in the story. It could have been more of a piece because it was such a big reveal. I mean, from the get go, like we've had only little, breadcrumbs, to its credit, breadcrumbs of the mystique kind of peeled back for Pavan. Like literally, he'll just say one thing in a sentence and it moves on. It never gives any time for it in a good way. It just, you learn little bits of scraps of his past as you go through, and to have the fact that the child was the real crux of it, the fact that he's given up the child to the Jedi, that was a big moment. I mean, I was like, well, really, I didn't expect that to be the severity of what had happened, and I would have liked to have seen more of a dynamic shift between the perspective of Darsha to him. There could have been a lot more of a character connected moment there. You're right, and it was just dialed back for the sake of the time and that it was that late in the story. But I think it's such a strong idea and such a strong way to kind of challenge her notions of the Jedi and bring understanding for his frustrations and misgivings about them. I think that could have been more of something, even if it had to be a larger story to make it work. But yeah, that's just how I felt.
I mean, it's never bothered me. I was just curious how you thought. How you felt about it.
I see what you're saying too, but I also think it is just long enough to where you still feel the impact, even if they don't really. Honestly, I wouldn't want them to make a big meal out of this. Like I agree with you that maybe having a direct conversation would be nice, but at the same time, I wouldn't want them to use that as a crux for just unnecessary drama. I think as it's presented, I think the flow is. You still get enough idea of the impact of this without it being directly stated. So I guess your mileage may vary on that. Also, it is worth noting too that like it is established that Darsha is a peer of Obi-Wan Kenobi in terms of like.
We have to talk about Obi-Wan
and whatnot.
Let us know in the comments what you think.
That would just mainly give you an idea of like the age sort of like dynamic. She's like just the same age, if not maybe a tiny bit older than he is. So. Just again to kind of like, because we mentioned things like how long you've been with the temple and stuff. We don't get a direct number, but you could kind of work backwards if you use that.
Yeah, she's probably about 25. He's like 25 or 24 or something.
And also, interestingly enough, like they're actually established to be friends. Like her and Kenobi. Like she's not very sociable at the temple, but the closest to a friendship she ever had with any of the other Padawans in her generation was him, and he very much feels the same way. There is this interesting line where like when you go from Kenobi's POV, he's thinking about Darsha, and he's like, and he's also willing to admit that she was not unpleasant to look at. I'm like, Obi-Wan.
Camera pans to Siritachi, is like giving them the side eye.
Like Obi-Wan, you dog.
Was that already a thing at that point?
It must have been because the apprentice books came out before this, right?
Honestly,
I mean, those are a lot of books to come out between 1999 and 2001.
My guess would have been they came before, but yeah,
they probably would have. been making them. I mean,
I think
maybe.
they were still probably ongoing at that point. I would guess. At
But
least that's what I would
the book
imagine.
with their relationship was one of the earlier ones, wasn't it? So theoretically, it could have been possible.
Even
for to
that
be out.
is kid stuff. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not.
Either way,
it's
Obi-Wan
hardly
has
a
been-
hallmark of Kenobi's character, like in broad strokes. You know what I mean? You have to be diving deep into that.
It's just an awkward, like it's just kind of an awkward line. Like I don't
people
really
can
know
find more than one person attractive. Okay,
Yeah,
like
for
it's
sure.
it's
For
fine.
sure. It's
Like,
just funny in the context of that Obi-Wan that you know at the time, particularly in Padawan stage, because that would have been,
especially if
the
you
books
have like
came
an
out before
author
and
who
about
didn't
it.
necessarily know the name Suritachi at all. Like it's
For
just a
sure.
perfectly natural thought, you know. But
but basically,
you know how like
during the. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, go ahead. We can just move.
No, I was about during all this, like Obi-Wan's like on his own mission, trying to follow up on the disappearance of Anun Bandara and Darsha. You know, he eventually finds the wreckage of the speeder from the Maul fight. He also goes into that cantina that we saw earlier, asking around for information. Gets into a bit of a scuffle with all of the the bar attendant. He sees
that's the
crime
most worthwhile part of the whole thing. Yeah.
Yeah, he sees the crime scene from the Black Sun, the hut. That Maul killed. He sees the carnage. It is. I will say this. Like, again, I understand that they have to keep to the continuity, but it is a little awkward when the text points out where Kenobi's thinking, "Huh, those look like lightsaber marks," but it couldn't possibly be a lightsaber mark. It must be a blaster. It's like. Again, I get it. It's a little. It's just annoying. Like no, like he's like you were so close.
I mean,
but I get it.
He has no reason to think it's not. You know what I mean? He
he
hasn't seen the Phantom Menace's script yet. He didn't read the script.
And at least I can put that away aside because we know that next week he's going to be the one killing Maul. So I can get over that bit a bit more. It's the darker side where it's like if people had just gotten to the temple.
Sure, but like what you were saying before, Callan, about like Pavan like knocking out Maul, which we'll get to, that being annoying. That didn't annoy me honestly as much as this, because the fact that they put so much emphasis into the writing of the burn marks and how that inner debate. Like again, it's fine. It's not a major flaw. It's more just a little outside of universe. It's irritating. As it's presented, it's perfectly fine. So that's all I wanted to say about it.
He does acknowledge internally that it may have been a lightsaber though, because he's thinking about the fact that he didn't want to have other people, the people he knew, involved, and he didn't want to think about Anun Bandara.
What I'm saying is, as it's presented, it's fine.
Yeah. It's you're right. It is a bit weird that he never then follows up and says, "Oh, I found lightsaber marks here and there." You know, it's bizarre there. But again, I guess he just didn't have time.
This is also a little world building bit that I like that they do with this from Kenobi's perspective. They established that the Jedi actually have like judicial authority enough to where if they see a crime scene and it has even remotely anything to do with one of their investigations, even though they're an independent organization, the authorities by law have to allow him to investigate. I like that little bit. Again, it makes sense, and we do see stuff like that in Attack of the Clones, when he's investigating, the Jango Fett saber dart and all that. Again, little things that I really do. Yeah. Well, that's its own can of worms, but I'm just saying little world building like that I appreciate. And I like the fact that it notes specifically that like Kenobi didn't necessarily like having to strong arm the Order's authority, but it did come in handy when necessary. It's a very Kenobi way of thinking, even at this point in his development.
On that detail, it was nice as well that he said you'll have the full authority and support of the Jedi Order as well. That was a nice note. But for this sequence, the thing that stood out strongest to me is, we've been raving about his character voices all the way through this, and it is the single strongest part of the book for me, that the strength of the voices in the story throughout. But this is basically generic Jedi doing generic Jedi stuff, and it gives very little room for Obi-Wan to thrive and have his character voice come out. And yet he manages it. He's fully feels like the Kenobi that we know from the books and from the films, etc. This is very well executed.
Menace era Kenobi,
particularly, which is a different flavor, from the.
You have to write a certain way,
It's very well handled, and ultimately, structurally speaking, it's only there because they mandate that Obi-Wan be there. But for what it is, it's very well handled for me. And for
we also
get good voice work from Whitwer as well.
Yes. We also get one of the funniest lines in the book, as far as I'm concerned, when Kenobi just effortlessly takes down all the mercenaries and people in the cantina, and the main dude is like, "So like, are all the Jedi as amazing as you?" And Kenobi's like, "Oh, I'm just a Padawan. I'm nothing compared to my peers."
Which is true, but he also plays it up as well. I'm not held with I'm thought of somewhat as a failure. I like that he kind of, it's the truth and he amps it up for the sake of effect.
Again,
he was almost given the boot when he was younger, so it's not really a lie.
That's true.
He was on the edge of being thrown out. So
But like again, like that's one of those things like you could totally imagine Ewan McGregor like doing that line and it would totally fit. Again, character voice, like you were saying, Callan, is very well done. And I also like the fact that like the descriptor of that, like it notes that like the dude's face like kind of visibly
It's
like
like, oh.
Yeah.
like felt like he was doing that as
Don't
he
be
was
messing
walking
with
away.
no Jedi. Yeah.
He's kind of like
we,
smirking under his breath a little bit. Again, little character bits I do appreciate. For
did
as
we
little as
talk
we get,
on?
Kenobi is really on point with his character.
Yeah, I like all this stuff. I actually like everything he does, and every moment is actually him. It's just the logic. Did we talk about this of like on camera, the fact that they send a Padawan to deal with something that a master and another Padawan have like disappeared?
Yeah,
doing
classic
like,
Jedi being idiots in the story. It's like,
why?
we can kind of
like,
excuse the previous one with her being sent for her mission, as we talked about the start.
Okay, so like Mace is like in charge of the
ridiculous.
council and he's busy, and Yoda's Grandmaster and has other stuff. Like, why can't Qui-Gon also go? What is Qui-Gon doing?
Yeah,
like
exactly.
Why isn't
and also
Qui-Gon
it specifically notes that half
Obi-Wan?
the council is on standby waiting to deal with the problem with the
Qui-Gon's not even on the council, right? Like, so like what is he doing?
Yeah,
like, how come he's not doing this?
And also as well, it's annoying because we know in Phantom Menace that none of them go to deal with it. Like, we're all on standby to deal with this problem, and then when it happens, we're just going to sit around at the temple. It's like, come on, people, send a master.
It wouldn't have been quite as egregious if we didn't have an entire sequence dedicated to them discussing what's going on and actually choosing Kenobi, because we see Yoda and Mace and Qui-Gon in a room together. First of all, I mean, to be fair, I do like the fact that like Qui-Gon, you know, despite his like nature, he's still very respected enough to where him and Yoda can like take his advice and they'll listen to it.
Sure.
Again, a little bit good setup.
But structurally though, like is there any good reason for Kenobi to be alone during this? Anything you couldn't do with the story?
Not really.
No.
You know what I mean? It just doesn't make any sense. So yeah, at the very least, send another Jedi because they don't know that Bandar is dead, for example. So at that point, you might be thinking, well, there's 4 Jedi out there, total. Like probably that's enough for whatever this is. But you haven't had answers from 2 of them. So like, why would you assume that Kenobi's enough? And because it's the whole council, the whole temple is that you're telling me nobody, like any hangers on.
That's the other fact. It's only like 10 miles away. Like, that's the other thing. It's so close. Yeah. It specifically notes that this is happening like a stone's throw away from the temple. It's not like it's on the other side of the planet or anything. So there is absolutely no story.
Well, they are under levels, but you're right. Yeah. Also, I mean, you would think if Dooku had existed by the time they wrote this book, he would have had a few things to say about this mission planning. But I guess that's not because he wasn't
at this very moment. He's in like some tavern somewhere bitching about the council to Sidious, like right now. Yeah, well, he doesn't know it's Sidious. He's talking to Senator Palpatine, but
hindsight
anyway.
2020. But
so this is like kind of like
anything else to say before we lead into the climax?
Oh, just one last thing as well I want to mention before we move on from Kenobi. The last beat post, obviously the fight and him discovering Darsh's death. I liked the fact that he was looking at the lightsaber. Obviously, it's a strong trope within the lore to have them reference and recognize the characters through the nature of the lightsaber construction, etc. For my money, in my head canon, he took a gleam, like an instant, like a memory from that, and attributed some part of his own later lightsaber design to that model. That just fits nicely for me, for his memory of his old friend.
I can definitely see that.
Nicely described blade hilt. But yeah, that's just a small thing to put image on.
No, that's a good thing to say, and you could even maybe tie that in back to like the original trilogy with him keeping Anakin's saber in his hut for when he eventually gives it to Luke and all that. The reverence, the respect, the memories, tied to a weapon and of the Jedi, and although they're not obviously
Kenobi's lightsaber supposed to be like a different one, film to film. I've not paid attention to that sort of thing.
So yes, he has in Phantom Menace and in Attack of the Clones, he has a specific hilt design, but by the time of Revenge of the Sith, he has the same one that he has in the original trilogy. So his hilt does change.
Destroys it in the second film.
Okay.
Yeah, because like in the one in this one, like he has like that more like
we must have talked about that somewhere. We can't be 12 or plus years into this and that have never come up at least once. Surely.
This is the kind of shit I've never cared about.
Oh no, I don't particularly care about it much either. But even then,
but like when he has at this point, it's one with that weird like little like spike pommel at the end, and it's like the more it actually kind of looks a lot like Qui-Gon's hilt.
Yeah, it was more plastic toy
sort of thing. Whereas the one he has like. Whereas, like the one he has in like Revenge of the Sith in the original,
it's got like a ball on the bottom, right?
Sort of thing. Yeah.
I'm
not sure why they did that. I mean, even to this day, but like it just is what it is.
Well, I mean, I don't care like what a character like if somebody has like a cool lightsaber, I go, oh, that's a cool lightsaber, but I don't like think about it beyond that. I remember like in the behind the scenes of what I assume must have been the Phantom Menace, he had a choice, and I think the actor was just picking what he thought worked nice for him to be working with.
And conveniently, they both looked similar as well, which fitted the fact they were Martian Apprentice. So
I guess anyone major enough got to choose like if they were going to be using it, but it feels like their choice was mostly how does it handle, like as opposed to this looks like my characters, right? So anyway.
Well, even Mace is another example of that.
He's the only one I've ever seen be like, I want purple. Like, he's like, okay, sure.
Well, even the hilt design is completely different from the one he has in Phantom Menace.
Well, moving through it, they got more individualistic. It was like the ones in Harry Potter. Post that certain point within the film creation, they went, okay, let's make these more in like someone with like a design bent got involved.
Yeah, but
these all be very unique.
But in Mace's case, that was silly because there was like a whole comic book explanation for how he had Eathcoths or something. It was some ridiculous Concord of Fealty ritual that explained why it was slightly different, and then he had like a completely different one in the next movie anyway, so that was totally pointless to explain. But anyway,
one last note on actually sabers. I think it's interesting to point out Darsha has a yellow blade.
Oh yeah, meant to mention that. Yeah, this was pre the gutting of all colors from the myth.
I was literally about to say more common in this era, to be fair, but still a unique quirk. I like that. It does make her stand out.
No, they're all green or blue, and that's it. Except for one purple because you asked.
Yellow looks bad on camera. I understand. Exactly, yellow you can't see.
Yeah, but still lame, but it is what it is. But again, it's a neat design choice. Also, it's like interpreting it like, the more she gets into the light and the code, she's like gleaming gold, light side, energy and stuff. Again, probably not intentional, but you can
also
look
like,
at it.
Can I just say like Phantom Menace is the last movie where lightsabers look good because they're nice and crisp in lines and you can actually see like every strike. And after that, it has like, they're like these wipey, like they're too bright. They're just they're too bright and like the contrast is too much. And
the overuse of CG that really doesn't help because so much of the backgrounds by the next two movies are all just blue screen. Whereas at least in Phantom Menace,
Phantom Menace was like shot with film also, and it's always shocking to me how like if you look at like the Blu-ray-ified like updated versions of those, or like probably 4K now, but whatever, those look much better than frames from like Attack of the Clones and Return of the Jedi or Revenge of the Sith. I mean Return of the Jedi too, obviously for different reasons. But anyway, tangent over. Anyway, back to this.
Back to the fight.
We essentially get to the climax. Basically, Maul corners the three of them in a. It's not a carbon freezing chamber.
It's like adjacent to the carbon freezing chamber. Funny enough, it's one over, isn't it? So it's not even the same room.
How many times has this been done since it was like a first time thing in Empire Strikes Back? But actually, it's been done many, 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 many times before that.
Yeah, exactly. And it's the fact that it was just something that you picked up in some random magazine as well. It's like, I read this article one time. This should be theoretically possible.
In Deus Ex magazine.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, I mean, to be fair, I5, he has like he has the calculation.
I'm joking. It's a joke.
He's a souped up protocol droid, is all we have to say. Because he's not medical.
I mean, he's quite literally like if you took C-3PO and Han Solo and like mashed them together, which I know sounds like a very weird combo, but it really works.
Again, finger guns.
Yeah. But the final fight, basically Darsha, she cuts herself off from them. They bulk up in the carbon freezing chamber while she fights Maul. She essentially gives herself completely to the Force at this point. This is kind of the culmination of what we've been talking about, her coming to terms with herself, who she is, being a Jedi in spirit, even if that means she'll never be a Jedi in rank. She surrenders herself fully to the Force. She's at peace. She realizes that things didn't go the way that she intended. And even if that is the case, that doesn't matter because she is in the Force now and the Force wills as the Force wills. And it ultimately leads to, her final stand against Maul. And it's honestly a very impressive fight, I will say. I do like the fact that as deep in the Force as she is, they also make a point of establishing the fact that even though has this revelation, her ability to use the Force compared to his is still so distinctly. And I don't mean just from a light side, dark side perspective. I like how they still describe the fact that, as much of a flow as she's achieving now, he's just able to, I wouldn't say casually call on the same power, but to him, it's just he's so much more experienced that even though she may arguably be channeling more energies than he is, he has much more greater control over it, and that's what gives him one of his biggest edges.
Yeah, it's the interesting part of it is the character work in the scene. It's a really well executed balance of character progression within just action sequence. But on top of that, what you're talking about there, the world building work that helps make the mechanics of Star Wars make sense. It does matter. You can't just play with this and do whatever you want in every single fight and have the larger world be cohesive. The way it makes sense is really clever. The fact that, you know, the average Padawan can throw themselves into the Force and reach like master level attunement, but that doesn't bridge the gap in experience. It doesn't. The way you can draw on power, but if you try and use it, you're using more personal exertion and will, which means you lose your oneness of the Force, which takes you back to your previous level. It does a good job of making it so that experience, skill, knowledge, power, instinct, it all matters.
You know, big difference.
Oneness to the Force is not something that you just throw yourself in and suddenly you'll beat everyone ever. You know, that would be dumb and reductive and damage the setting as a whole. So this was like the perfect blend of character work and, hey, we want lightsabers and Jedi and Sith to, you know, make sense in a world that feels like it functions. So I love that for that.
It actually, like, I can read a little bit from that like kind of sums it up. So she deflected, forcing her mind to disengage from following his technique, to relax and maintain her deep connection to the Force. Thoughts were a hazard. He did not share that weakness. She could feel the truth of that. He had more conscious control of the power at his command, and that gave him the edge. If she tried to increase her control of the Force, she would reduce her ability to simply react. But if she did not, she could only defend.
It's a really lovely
kind of encapsulates what you were saying there.
Yeah, it's really
because the sort of the ebb and flow of the energies passing between them. Again, to your point, Callum, like the characterization, she's had this revelation, she's giving herself fully, and at the same time, the sort of juxtaposition that I mentioned before about Maul just being pure dark efficiency, you know, then and there. I like how they work in the characters, not just their character arcs, but just even their base personalities into a fight itself. That's really a point that makes a fantastic confrontation.
Yeah, I mentioned the world building benefit as well as the character benefit, but on top of that as well, I meant to mention it does Maul's credit. You know, it shows you why he's as skilled as he is, why he's dangerous it is. He's not just encountered someone who has like a quarter of the experience, but because they've achieved oneness, he can't beat them. It's like, oh no, this makes it a challenge, but I'm going to break through with everything you just said there. It's a good. It works so well on all levels. Absolutely love the scene.
I don't really have anything to add. I think it's really well done.
Roger. And it ends with the "oh no, I can't win" explosion, which I still stand by the fact that she earned a limb.
Okay, well, I don't. I mean, I think it's fine as it is. But anyway, that would have just been so silly to me. Like, you didn't know, but under his glove it was a robot hand the whole time, and it was explained in this book. It's just such a retroactive deep cut. It's just weird. Like, but anyway, I want to say something because I thought this book, the first time I read it, I distinctly thought that Lauren somehow was going to like be resurrected, like, you know, from the carbonite freezing, like much later, like than in this book. And so I thought it was going to be like he'll wake up at some point after like the Jedi already know the Sith are back, and he's like, oh yeah, I tried to warn you back. So I thought it was going to be slightly immune to the problem of a prequel where it's a foregone conclusion, but nope, he wakes up and gets himself killed in 5 minutes. So.
I meant to mention the when they come back in the speeder chase when Anu Bondara sacrifices himself and then they immediately invalidate the sacrifice and put themselves back in danger. I was like, oh, that's a trope that I absolutely despise in general. It gets away with it the way it crafts it in the story, and I understand why it's limited to it. But I just wanted to mention that earlier. But this is the more egregious example of it. Like all they have to do is go to the temple, and then they'll be free to go wherever they want. It's going to cost them. I mean, to be fair, it would cost him more time to lose Maul, but he knows he can't beat Maul. Or if so, why doesn't he just shoot the bloody ship when it's just docked in the station? It's so many things that come along here. The troll from the author of he sends I5 to go and deal with it. Oh, but never mind. He's now been memory wiped.
Is that a troll or is it like a tragedy? Like, I mean,
it's unfair to say troll, wrong word, but it's just in terms of us, it's just he's right. They fly past the Jedi Temple for Christ's sake. Like it's just
it is because it's a Rogue One ending years and years before Rogue One ever happened. You know what I mean? So like, I mean, it's I think it was kind of novel for that too. Like, I mean, I can't think of too many times where things end that on such a grim note in that way. And at the same time, like the characters all still have their self-respect. Like his
For
dying
sure.
thought is that he's proud that someday his son will be a Jedi because he knew Darsha. You know what I mean? And
Yeah,
what
that
she
was a
was
really
about.
nice touch. I like that as
Right.
well.
So
But
works
then,
really well.
like,
Yeah.
I really
before-
wish he hadn't
before
set his
we-
gun to stun though. That was the one that really pissed me off. It was like, can you?
Right.
Because he
Well, I was
actually
about to say,
shot
like,
him.
before-
He shot him.
before we-
The Sith would have just lost one of their best agents if he'd just not.
Maul
set that
can't
gun
die.
differently.
Prequel. Like yeah,
I
of
know,
course.
Yeah,
I know,
he
it
can't-
just-
he
it's
had
like,
to
ugh.
survive somehow.
I completely
But, like,
understand all of
yeah,
that, but it
like,
still makes it
after-
frustrating as hell to read the last 15 pages.
But still, like after the fight, like we mentioned, as Maul thinks his mission is complete, he has the holocron. He's making his way back to his ship, report to his master, and all that. He does still give Darsha her credit as a worthy opponent, a worthy challenger,
Yeah.
along with Pavan. By the way, he also gives Pavan a lot of credit as well. Along
I
with
mean,
I5.
by the end, he bloody better. I mean, the guy literally came back from death, as far as he's word, and caught him by surprise, and got the hologram off him, and got to his.
Well, the best
If he's
part
not
of
given
that-
his credit at that
Well,
point, he's a
Well,
bastard.
the best
But
part
is
of it is
yeah.
like when he realizes Pavan's there, it literally says that he was questioning his own sanity.
Yeah, I love that
It's like, no,
moment.
I know
That's-
you're dead.
Yeah,
like,
such a Schadenfreude moment there. And he's like,
I
wait,
can't
what?
sense you. But by the way, where the fuck did the thing come from? Like the can't sense
nodule
me
from
button. Like I mean, where was that? The whole story.
I don't
What
know.
the fuck? That
Why
was
did
the
he wait
laziest
for that?
thing ever.
Yeah, just to set that up.
That's not a nitpick. That is like a like I
Yeah.
mean that was bad.
No, but
Yeah.
after they unfreeze, they resign themselves to finish what Darsha started. Essentially, I5 reveals that somehow one of the nodules from the what's it called again? I keep
Towson.
forgetting. The Towson, thank you. He'd somehow gotten a hold of it, and that was the part of its anatomy that allowed it to block the Force. Not sure how that still works if it's disconnected from the Towson, but that whatever's whatever. And that essentially, he sends I5 to go warn the Jedi, as we said, aided by what's the gangster's name? Again,
doesn't
I know I'm
matter.
forgetting.
Doesn't matter, yeah. If
Yeah,
this had come
he's
out
worked with,
post Clone Wars, it would have been Dexter. I'm almost certain.
Probably.
That
But
would have made
anyway,
him shitty.
yeah, I don't know if I like that. Dexter's kind of cool. But again, neither here nor there. He gives I5. He betrays him because he actually turns I5 off because he knows that I5 is not gonna let him go on his own. So he basically says, take I5 to the temple, turn him back on. He'll deliver the information. I'm gonna go after. Well, he doesn't say Sith, but he'll go after this individual. Go after Maul essentially, but he gets double crossed.
This individual always makes me laugh. I don't know why. This
He gets double
individual decided to.
Yeah.
it's just such a funny term to me. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, he gets so essentially because getting to that POV shot, he betrays Pavan because he doesn't share his reverence for droids, a thing that we established earlier is a big part of I5's character, and he ultimately decides, I'm just going to keep him as my bodyguard. Screw the Jedi, screw everything else. I'm in it for myself. Doesn't matter. Obviously, this also sets up, I5 later coming back in the Coruscant Nights trilogy. He meets Jax and all that, which, if we ever get to those, we'll more detail. He goes after Maul, who, like we said, he uses the nodule to make himself invisible to the Force. Sneaks up behind Maul, and it establishes that he has 3 shots left in his gun.
Right there, he nails him. He's down. It's just if it had just been a blaster bolt.
I know. But to be fair, I do like the fact that even after 2 stun bolts, it's actually not enough to completely knock Maul out. That's another point in Maul's resiliency, because most people would be completely.
He's down on the floor. Put the gun to his head, put it in his mouth, and just pull the trigger again a 3rd time, for Christ's sake. He knows what this guy's survived. He's seen him have multiple explosions, a repulsor engine to the face, and he immediately got back up. What this guy represents, and the fact that he's come for revenge. It's like, just oh my god, just kill him.
So he gets the holocron, but before he actually does go for the 3rd shot, but before he can, Maul wakes up and slashes his hand off. Again, a bit of gore that we don't typically get. It's pretty brutal. And by the way, they're all doing this in 0G. That's the point where we mentioned before. Pavan has experience in that environment. I like that they established that, and also I like that they established the fact that someone as experienced as Maul does know how to fight in 0G, even though it's not something he normally we never really see him do. Again, another nod to his experience, which I keep bringing up. But he does ultimately manage to escape. He escapes with the holocron minus one of his hands. He makes it to a gathering of senators, and he sees a senator that he has heard a reputation of. He knows as someone of true integrity that he knows if he'll get him to. He gives him the holocron, and right before he passes out, he thanks Senator Palpatine for helping him complete his mission.
Just run into the room. The Sith are real. He's right behind me. I've got a holocron here that proves it. Just send an email while he's in the taxi before he goes off to think. Just go to the Jedi Temple and not try and hunt Maul down yourself for no reason. Just use a real blaster bolt, kill Maul on the shot. It's oh my god, so many ways to avoid an absolute galactic crisis. It's
Dean wants you to feel that way.
I know. It's really good. It's really good. It's just I hate it. It's not bad writing at all. It's just I'm gonna really turn the screws on these guys.
Straight up that he is Sidious. So
also maybe... just like Palpatine really has no business going. Everything has proceeded.
Yeah.
like no, it hasn't. It has not.
No, it really hasn't. Yeah, his foresight is absolute bullshit.
This is proof of that. Yeah. Obviously ties into the Plagueis scenes, which we've already talked to death about. But again, the moment I do like the writing though. I like the fact that they never use Palpatine's name until literally the last word of that chapter, because he's like, oh, the senator did this, the senator did that. Oh, he reacted like this.
You know who it is.
He has this. Again, like in hindsight, it's kind of obvious, but it is. I do like that. I like the fact that they don't give Palpatine. They keep the mystique for as long as possible. That's good writing, and I do appreciate the way that was set up.
The whole thing is good. Like Matt said, it's all intentional. It's infuriating. It's like it's intentionally like I'm going to turn the screws on these readers, and they're going to hate every second of this. It's going to be tragic as hell. It's just It's I think the worst one was, aside from the blaster, because I mean, if it had not had any impact, that'd be fine. But the fact that they actually hit Maul and he went down, if it had been a real blaster, he would have just been Maul dead in that instance. That, and then the specifically noting that the speeder car goes past the Jedi Temple. Just would have been that it didn't kill him.
Yeah. It just would have been, it hit him in a fatal spot. He's fine.
Yeah, well, I mean the guy can survive.
He's got to survive no matter what.
But
it's necessary. It's a little contrived, but again, if you're going to set it up in this way, you have to do something like to make it make sense. Otherwise, you're literally breaking the whole fucking universe. So. But I will say, I mean, most of the fact that it is infuriating just comes from the fact that like later stuff that came out that fills in the gaps. Why it's so infuriating.
Again, it's not a critique. It is not a critique. It's just an emotional read as you go through it. I'm like, ooh.
I will say this though. I like in the epilogue. So he wakes up from a nightmare in a hotel room. First of all, the as brief as it is, the sheer horror in the descriptors of him like waking up in a cold sweat as like he's imagining Maul lunging at him, that's again really well done. And the phantom pain that he's feeling from the loss of his hand also is a good way of kind of bookending the horror aspect before the main thing happens, of course. But again, I really do like the setup to this, and I think it deserves its credit.
Yeah, no, for sure. The phantom pain,
and then basically what happens is Right. It's noted in his POV monologue that Palpatine assured him that the holocron would get to the Jedi, and the assassin had been captured and dealt with, and he's been offered a stipend to where he could live comfortably. He does bring up I-5 never making it to the temple, him finding out about that. You would think there'd be a bit more concern on that, but again, it's as the situation is presented, I'm sure he was thinking a long game because he didn't know what was going to happen shortly. And he goes out on his balcony to get some fresh air. Things are going good. He turns around, opens his door, and Darth Maul is standing right there. First of all, that's terrifying. That visual, like imagine you're
standing there in your hospital gown. You're stood there and open the door, and Maul is facing you after all of that, and it just leads you right back to square one.
I do love the fact that it establishes that he's so terrified and he's so like disbelieving at what he's seeing that he's not even making any noise. He's literally frozen with fear, just
and then as Matt alluded to earlier, having that own little moment of oneness with the Force, he kind of accepts it, and his last thoughts are of Jax, which is a beautiful flourish and touch.
And then we get the final POV of Maul as he's killing him, and the fact that as frustrating as everything was, Pavan had proven himself a worthy opponent, deserving a quick death. Again, that sort of honor in his own Sith way being established is really nice. And then, again, really, really appreciate this. The last line of the book is, he walked away, his mission complete. And then, boom, that's it. I love that. Mission complete. Because this whole thing, obviously started off in a very clinical mission sort of way, and even though nothing went the way he expected, that's a fantastic bookend, and it's a really good way of again, Maul's characterization. At the end of the day, despite everything that went on, this was ultimately about the mission for him. So the fact that that's literally the last line in the book, and it is from his POV, I think is, again, very artistically done, and I really do appreciate that.
Sure, agreed.
So we're ready to wrap.
I like that they don't try and like shoehorn in like Phantom Menace stuff, like like 2 months later, the Nemoidians, I know it's not actually 2 months. I'm just saying, like, I like the fact that it didn't end on like Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan in a ship going to Naboo and all that. Like, we do get that, but that's not the last thing in the book. I like the fact that it specifically ends right there in that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, that wraps us up on the content of Shadowhunter. Like I said, this was my first reading of it, so it was a joy for that alone, getting to finally dive into this content rather than just knowing the beats of what had happened. I get to see how it happened and why. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I mean, we talked about it going all the way through. The best thing about this book to me is the character voice. Even in characters who have no business being particularly involved in the story, every single one of them, secondary, tertiary, they all have a wonderful voice. They all have distinct features to them. They fit the world. They move through through the setting perfectly. Absolutely loved it for that. I'm looking forward to looking into more of his works in Star Wars at some point in the future, hopefully.
As someone who has experienced this for the first time, Callan, would you say that the overarching continuity of all things connected to this that would come later is like more of an enhancement, or do you think it really does still stand on its own when you can put yourself into that like 2002 sort of mindset?
Definitely enhancement. I mean, it's funny because the tone here is obviously quite horrifying. It's intentionally supposed to be scary and full of dread, but there's also that beat of comedy to it, that intentional kind of Star Wars flourish that is the thing that's most aided by all of this. The tragedy aspect for them not actually managing to get the information out and all the damage that comes as a result of that, but also the fact that you have the situation with the Sith on the background, Sidious and Plagueis running around the way they are from the Plagueis book way at the tail end. The knowledge that the Maul does end basically next week. After this book finishes, he goes off on his mission. He dies on his next mission. So there's I don't know, some of that just works to make it a funny blend of tragedy and comedy for me for all of this. But which would normally make this, like you say, you say, does this enhance it? Normally that would theoretically diminish this kind of story, because how can you take a threat this seriously if you know how it ends in the way it does? But the way he's written this, it's so rich in character voice and so rich in reader experience that to me it just all works together. But yeah, that's a ramble way of saying yes. I think it does get bolstered by what comes.
No, that's. I'm glad you said that, and I completely agree. Like, to your point about the character voice, a lot of what I said in Shadows of the Empire, the fact that you are making these characters in these settings from their perspective feel unique and distinct, even if the actual writing in and of itself is, I wouldn't say basic, but it is kind of straightforward in certain points. That kind of 1.5 perspective really does a lot for amping up like you said, the character voice, the character actions, the character thought process. And honestly, like, I don't know if this is really going to be a hot take or anything. I think that even to this day, this is the best look at the character of Darth Maul, really, period, in my opinion. Like, there are a lot of works where I appreciate him to a certain extent, but like, this is not only one of the most extensive dives you get into his character, but the fact that they're able to juxtapose that to you have the threat he represents, you have the threat that he is, and at the same time, you have that thread of competence that goes through, even if the sort of narrative requires him to be foiled at certain points. And then, in contrast to that, you have other amazing characters like Darsha, who, again, we've talked to it to death, her sort of character arc of coming to terms with herself and being a Jedi beyond the shackles and the sort of dogma and the sort of structure of the order and what it truly means to serve the Force, and using the Jedi code as a means of expressing that, I think is just a fantastic character beat. And even though she only appears, of course, in this book, you get so much character from her that you really do you understand about, who she is as a person down to like the smallest detail. Same goes for, Lorne Pavan. I mean, obviously, he's sort of, his legacy in the form of Jax Pavan, he has his own adventures. It lives on its own way, and I-5, of course, appears in that. But again, for what we get of him, this book does an amazing job of just, like I said, character voice, character portrayal, but also weaving that voice into an overarching narrative. This is a side story piece. It is very much Darth Maul's, side quest mission before Phantom Menace. But even with that relatively simple concept, it really goes to show how you can take a relatively straightforward concept in that and turn it into a broader narrative that still, holds true to the energy of the entire franchise as a whole. That's basically my massive roundabout way of saying I really enjoy this book. I'm really happy that it still holds up the way that it does, and it is 100% a recommendation. And honestly, like, if you like his other works, Death Star, the Med Star, stuff like that, obviously he co-wrote those, but even though this is relatively early in his Star Wars, I guess you could say career, not the earliest, of course, but so much of what he brings to that table is present here, and I think that is absolutely fantastic. So yeah, definite recommendation.
Yeah, I echo a lot
Again,
of that.
I didn't mean to ramble there. Sorry about that.
Oh, that's good. I do agree that it's like the best look at his character, but I say that as somebody who doesn't like his character after they brought him back. So if you like him, I understand my opinion could be completely worthless to you. I respect that. But yeah, this is to me kind of like, I always thought that most people thought that Maul had kind of like a Boba Fett syndrome and that he was cool for like 2 minutes and then had a lame death and we wanted to see more. And so both characters have been made a real meal of after the fact, to the point where it's too much and some of it's stupid and whatever. But yeah, I'm glad that this existed. I do tend to view it mostly as kind of like a one-off, but I think the work that it adds the most to is Plagueis. Plagueis would have been written differently if this hadn't been written the way that it was, for example. I also think it's
chapters in our review.
yeah, I don't know if you can
really
cast
funny.
your mind back to like what it was like the first time you went through Plagueis. I would struggle to make heads or tails of what was happening towards the end of Plagueis if I just didn't know this book as well as I did. It would have seemed very odd. So I'm curious if anybody had just picked up Plagueis one day and thought, this is great, huh? I don't. Okay, I'd be really curious
with the
about
experience
that.
of the EU as a large, most people's experience, I imagine, would be, oh, I'm sure there's a book or a comic that explains this, and you just
I don't know.
patch it in yourself.
Books like Plagueis, though, because Plagueis is a name dropped from the films, easily, I'm sure many people just picked it up and just like tried to have a go at it without like all the training. Because I don't think you should really read Plagueis until you've read like everything EU, because it's the capstone to all of it.
Yeah, exactly.
But
really
one of the few flaws of the book is that it's not just like instantly accessible.
Yeah, it's Lucino's ultimate Lucino, trek. You know what I mean? But yeah, I didn't expect it to necessarily sort of weather the tides of time better than like the Darth Bane trilogy, for example, but it definitely has, in my opinion. There are flaws in it, but there's nothing I thought was like egregious or just flat out silly. Or there were a couple of things, but they were very few and far between, and all things that I thought were quite forgivable. And when you look at everything else on this guy's resume, I mean, he was involved in quality stuff. He's a good writer.
Yeah, Michael Reeves.
So,
yeah, all his energy comes to the forefront. So if you're a fan of his other works, definitely.
I do think, like, when I listen to this or read it, whatever, it reads like a movie. I think they could still make a movie out of this, and if they wanted to like wring some more money out of Darth Maul, I think they could pretty much just tell this story this way, more or less. And you might not want to maybe stick in a de-aged Ewan McGregor as Obi-Wan, but also Kenobi doesn't need to be here anyway. That would be like an acceptable deviation from the story. Yeah. But everything else, I think it's really good stuff, and yeah, I love it. I also I just think it's a nice bit to point out like the kind of like just general rule of cool, just kind of swag that Sith get to like just they get away with a lot that they shouldn't because of that. I picked the book up from Maul, but like when I think of it now, it's more like a Darsha, and her master and Lorne Pavan and I5 book. I care about those characters far more than Maul, even though I think Maul's really cool in this. He's like a T1000 to their like characters really actually care about.
Striking that balance, as we talked about earlier, for sure. This is one of the great success stories of like a corporate mandate saying, "Hey, make this, I want money," and then actually taking that. Okay, well, it's going to be good as well.
Yeah.
I'm not just going to cash it in. So that's
what happens when you make
perfect example of when that happens.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So yeah, if you haven't read it, and especially if you have or plan to be reading Darth Plagueis, pick this one up. Just no reason not to.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But we hope you guys have enjoyed. This has been our analysis on Darth Maul Shadowhunter. I'm Callum, and I still don't have an outro.
Well, this is Matt. Thanks for watching. Bye.
Evanova95, we hope you guys enjoyed, and we'll see you guys later.
Goodbye.